Well, hello. Welcome to 2026, everyone. It's college counseling tonight. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one on one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. I'm so excited to be here because, oh my goodness, it's 2026. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I thought, why not? It's Saturday night. A lot of students are a little bit stressed because it's deadline time for regular decision, and many students do wait to the last minute in order to complete their applications regular decision. So I thought, why not? I'm on a comfortable chair here. I might as well curl up here on this chair and go live with you to see if any of you have any questions about your regular decision applications before you hit submit. And also just to talk about the current state of play in the world of college admissions generally. Again, you don't usually see me in this location. I have to actually, it's getting a little warm in here. I got to unbutton this a little bit. I'm sorry. Let's get comfortable. I hope you're comfortable yourself. If you are working live and you just happen to be on YouTube at 6 p.m. Eastern on the 3rd of January 2026, you're lucky. You're in for a really good time because I don't know how long this will last. This could be 10 minutes. This could be 20 minutes. This could be an hour. I don't know. But I've decided to go live and see what, if anything, there is happening out here in YouTube land today. Usually I do these taped and I go on and I go off really fast. But today I thought, you know what? Why not? I haven't gone on camera for a number of months now. I thought this would be a really great opportunity to just go on camera live. And I'm so excited again to be here. Happy 2026. For those who made it through 2025, congratulations. It is now 2026. And as I said, I have been a college admissions coach for 20 years now. This is the 20th anniversary. It was back in 2006 that I planted my flag in the college admissions realm, and I haven't left since. As I've worked in high schools and colleges, I've worked one-on-one with clients all around the world, and I'm so happy to work with such amazing students and parents as they've navigated the college admissions process. And today I want to work with you. So if you have any questions about your regular decision undergraduate application for first year admission, and you just so happen to be around here live right now, you can put those questions right into the chat. But if you have no questions, I did want to sort of just zoom out and say, oh my gosh, what a mess it is that colleges have these multiple deadlines for regular decision. It used to be back in the day, many years ago, and I sort of do feel like an anachronism at this point because I've been doing it so many years. And I sort of, unlike many people in the college admissions realm, I sort of do stick to first principles, whereas many in the college admissions world, they sort of end justifies the means mentality to meet certain numbers and to please their bosses, et cetera. But I stick my head out there and I say that we have to stick to first and best principles, which is we want to try our very best to complete applications ethically and in a manner that will be articulate and eloquent so you get in the right way, as opposed to having to get into college or university through the back door or through nefariousness or other unseemly behavior that you really don't want to have to deploy in order to get into college, because you want to get in for the right reasons. You want to be accepted for the right reasons. And again, I find that a lot of people who last in college admissions on the college side really do have to put their ethics on the side, if you will, in order to last. Because especially at the Ivy League level, let's be honest, I have seen amazing students get in. I have seen amazing students get rejected. I have seen pretty students get in, and I've seen pretty students get rejected. So it's really a lottery at the Ivy League level to get into colleges and universities because they get so many applications and there's so many institutional priorities that make no sense to the average person that they have to contend with in order to sort of curate their classes. But for really all the other colleges, even the ones just a hair below the Ivy League level, I'm talking schools like Vanderbilt, I'm talking schools like WashU and Duke's and Georgetowns and Johns Hopkins, who gets in and who doesn't get in makes much more sense to me, having done this now for 20 years, whereas Who gets into the Ivies? We can try our best, and we do, but it often doesn't make sense who ultimately gets in. So, what I was saying, though, I got off on a tangent. What I was saying is that the deadlines stink. It's ridiculous. You should all just pick a day and just stick to it. Some schools, out of consideration for the fact that many people are on winter break, have their deadlines on January 5th, which is Monday. But then other schools decided, oh, well, why not? Let's just have it January 3rd, which is today, a Saturday of all days, for regular decision. Other schools are very traditional. They say their deadline is January 1st. So it just creates this mess where, especially for the procrastinator amongst us, they are creating different deadlines for these students, and they're just getting them up on 3 different dates every other day, the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, in order to complete another tranche of regular decision applications. And that's just not fair. Let's just pick a deadline and stick to it. That's what I would say, in order to make this as simple as possible for those students who unfortunately are having to complete their application regular decision. But as I said, if you are a subscriber, or if you're not a subscriber, what a great opportunity. Just write right now your question into the chat. I will look at it at least. I can't promise I'll answer it because I don't know what types of questions I'll get. But if you have a college admission specific question that you've been dying to ask me, I have gone live here on the 3rd day of 2026 because I just felt like it. I just decided I'm on this lovely little chair in a corner here in this room that you've never seen before, and I'm just going to go live and talk about college admissions until I can no longer talk this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. A lot's going on in the world. I think we've just toppled another regime in the United States. So that's very interesting. That happens every few years. For those people who were around 20 years ago, we had just done that with Iraq, right? A couple years earlier when I started college admissions coaching back in 2026. So, this is a long pattern of things repeating itself. It's like history repeats, and history repeats every year in the world of college admissions. I have been applying to college now for 20 years with my students. And I will say a lot has changed, but most has not. Most has remained the same. The deadlines changed a little bit here and there. Like I said, the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th regular decision. But really, colleges are still currently expecting one marquee essay as your Common App essay. They're looking at a couple or maybe one big supplemental essay if they're selective. And in the case of Brown, maybe 7 little statements, little short statements. Harvard has 5. So these little short answers. And that's, of course, because AI and no one knows how to write any longer. And they don't want to even know if you're using AI at some of these top schools because they want to accept who they want to accept anyway. So the writing is just pro forma. They don't really read the writing or care about the writing anymore unless it helps you. And they were already wanting to help you, or hurts you. In the case, they'll use it against you. But whatever the case may be, we're living in a situation now where there is a lot of craziness in college admissions, right? I mean, I didn't write about it. I did a video. My last tape video was about QuestBridge. And some people commented like I was really bashing on QuestBridge. I actually feel worse for the QuestBridge kids than anyone else, because here, in many cases, they're low-income kids. They're probably all low-income kids, or they're supposed to be at least. And the QuestBridge kids are deluded into believing that this is going to help them, when in fact, the very best colleges are already completely need blind for domestic applicants, and they're going to meet 100% of need. So why go through the pain of going to try to get matched with one particular college when you can play the field and get a lot of amazing packages? So I'm like anti-QuestBridge for a lot of reasons. But the other reason that I'm anti-QuestBridge, of course, is because QuestBridge will not release the statistics about gender and race and ethnicity breakdown of applicants versus finalists versus matched students. And if they did that, the whole thing would come crumbling down in a second. But they can't do it. And that's, of course, why more and more colleges are farming out certain recruiting, let's just put it that way, to QuestBridge. But for all the other students, and I would recommend even for the QuestBridge students, we should all try to focus on the Common App. Trust me, I am not a fan of the Common App. I do not believe that the Common App has anyone's best interest at heart other than the colleges and universities themselves running up numbers on applications. But it's easy, it's relatively user-friendly, and you just sort of one and done type experience. You can apply to up to 20. And that's enough. That's enough. I mean, I always say apply to 9 or fewer and call it a day. But there are some people who need to do all 20 for some reason. And the Common App should be where it is. It should not be QuestBridge, because QuestBridge is a completely shady organization that if it really was exposed to sunlight, again, like I said, there could be, I don't know, RICO charges or something against it. Oh, look, there are questions. Look at this. There are people actually alive right now and on YouTube. So I'm surprised by that 6 p.m. on a Saturday. So why are you watching me? Anyway, okay. So WSL3119. I thank you so much for joining me. It's like we're double dating here. So do you anticipate a shifting landscape this year with changing international policies? Is that more beneficial for domestic students? Well, that's a great question. Look, no, I mean, the money is where it's at in the United States. It's all about the money. So these colleges and universities, many of which are just hedge funds with, some classes associated with them, they are all just about soaking as much money from as many people as possible. So, of course, that benefits the international applicant, the full pay international applicant. It does not benefit, of course, in most cases, the middle class or poor international applicant. They have no chance of getting into most selective colleges in the United States, at least with any sort of aid. But there are a handful of schools that actually do even meet need requirements for international students with need. But really, who it benefits most, of course, are the international students who are willing to be full pay and show, in their application form, like USC and other schools, even ask, show me your bank account, show me that you have at least $90,000 in the bank. Those students are in demand just as ever before, just like last year. Now, whether as many of them want to apply this year is, of course, an open question. That's, I guess, based off of your family's comfort level with sending you to the United States in the current political climate. And that, of course, in many ways is traced back to your politics. And that's, of course, something I don't need to get into with you because some of you may be right-leaning or left-leaning or more free market or more collectivist or whatever. But and of course, safety issues in the United States. The United States is a really wild country in terms of safety. So many international families just may not be impressed with the United States any longer because it's so unsafe in many ways relative to maybe where they're from, or it's unsafe in a different way than they're used to. So that could be turning people off. But obviously Trump and the current political climate and the fact that we just arrested some guy in South America and bring him to New York for trial. All of this could theoretically impact how many students hit submit on their application from international destinations. But I often say, many of the international students going to college in the United States are actually officially American citizens. They're not really American citizens culturally. They are what I call CNOs, citizens in name only. You would be shocked at how many official American citizens go to these top colleges, and they've rarely lived in the United States. They were dropped in here. They are basically anchor babies. I mean, their parents decided to have the children in the United States. Many of them are middle or upper class. They got an OBGYN in the United States, and they just hopped on a plane a week or two before they were born. They gave birth here, and then they left. They went back to Brazil. They went back to France. They went back to China, you name it. And then 18 years later, because that family already was really interested in sort of international arbitrage with their child and collecting that American citizenship, now, of course, they also want to send their children to the United States for college. And now, of course, they're qualified for FAFSA, not that many of them need it because they don't. But and so here they are again, 18 years later, applying, and they officially come in as American citizens. But in many cases, they have dual citizenship, or even if they don't have dual citizenship, these CNOs, citizens names only, they are not in any way American, other than the fact they can vote and pay taxes, of course, in the United States once they start making money. But otherwise, and of course, collect benefits if necessary. But really, it's mainly just sort of a status play. They wanted to have the American citizenship. Now they want to have the American education, and they've been living somewhere else. Now they want to go get a good education in the United States. So a larger percentage than you may realize of official American citizens at these top colleges like Harvard and Yale and Princeton, all of them, are actually American citizens that are not really any people who live in the United States or in any way culturally attached. They have two parents who are French or two parents who are Brazilian, and they're citizens in name only, and they come in here. So those are actually what I would call international students too. I mean, officially they're not. But I'm not really answering your question. I'm just pontificating at this point. But I actually think that the international numbers will go down at a number of schools, of course, but not because the colleges want them to go down. And trust me, the colleges are just beside themselves. Financially, they want as many full-pay international students as possible. So, it also benefits someone who's a citizen in name only if they're full pay in many ways, just to, apply, not deal with the financial aid issue. So again, I'm mixing a lot of things up here, but long story short, I would say that I don't anticipate much of a change. Again, some schools could see a little drop, but that's mainly just on the part of international families who may be leery of the United States for some political or social reason. But that goes up and down. And I mean, where is better? I mean, is the United Kingdom a more dynamic economy right now? Like, let's be honest, it's not. And the United Kingdom is a mess too. So Europe, of course, is sort of sclerotic. So I don't really see many impressive competitors to the United States in terms of higher education, despite the fact that the higher education scene in the United States is also incredibly, well, whatever the word is, that's the opposite of dynamic. I mean, it's incredibly, again, you know, it's like it's not a free market. It's intentionally keeping the number of seats in limited. That's particularly true, of course, at the graduate level medical school. They could have increased the number of seats in medical school years ago. That organizations, associations, basically unions limit that ability, and the whole thing is a scam. But at the undergraduate level, at least I think one of them is, I think Columbia is trying to get more overall undergraduate students. Now, interestingly, Columbia is the one that's the most dominated by international students as it is. I mean, it's basically just Columbia is basically just an international university that happens to find itself in Manhattan, but similar to NYU and Northeastern, I mean, basically it's a completely foreign organization now in the United States. So they're obviously trying to build out so they can even have more seats for full pay international students. But it really depends on the school. It depends on the school. Okay. Oh my God, there's more people joining us here as we are. Okay, what is this? I will check out your website. Oh, thank you, whoever California resident. But curious if you also review deferral forms. I think what you may be referring to there is you may be referring to LOCIs, as I call them, letters of continuing interest. And I guess I could, yeah, of course, I do that for clients all the time. If God forbid they get deferred, and it's very sad if someone gets deferred. Most of my students do not get deferred; they get in, thankfully. But yeah, I'm happy to. I have you can do a half an hour session with me known as a strategy session, and I can do a LOCI review with you live if you just share your screen with me during that session. I can review your letter of continued interest. That is due in most cases if you were deferred, EA, or ED. That letter of continued interest should be submitted, I usually say by the 20th of January. It doesn't have to be in by the 5th. It doesn't have to be in the first business day of the new year. It can be in, by the 15th, the 20th. They're revving up their regular decision review now. They're real people. When they come into the office on Monday, they're all going to talk either in person or virtually about how the winter break was. And, they'll be kibitzing for a day or two and not getting anything done. So they'll start reviewing their files again in the middle of next week. So there's no huge rush here. If you've already just been deferred, they probably don't want to look at you again so soon anyway. They want to sort of put you on the back burner when they review some newer files. So really get that letter of continued interest in by the 20th of January at the latest. I did a whole video 2 years ago, almost exactly, about letters of continued interest. So definitely watch that video if you want to have some of my free advice regarding how to knock your letter of continuing or continued interest out of the park and hopefully seal the deal. But one of the big takeaways from that video is if that school remains a school you will attend if you get in, regular decision, say that in your letter of continued interest. Don't just say, oh, thanks. Oh, I'm so thankful for getting another review. I still really want to go to your university. It's my dream. I've been dreaming about this since I was 4. No, what's more powerful is for you to say, if accepted regular decision, do know, my friend, I will attend. I mean, you don't say it like that, but basically you want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and say, accept me now, and I promise I will come. I promise I will attend. That's what you want to do, because that's going to convince them that even though it's no longer operable that you are committed, it's no longer, the ED agreement is dead. If they know you're more likely to convert and yield, there's a slightly higher chance they're going to really be interested in you. And obviously they're not so interested in you anyway, because you just got deferred, because if they really were into you, they would have already accepted you. So, I mean, that's horrible news for whenever you're deferred. I mean, you can try to look at the silver lining, but you were just deferred, right? Early decision or early action. So that stinks for you. Like, if they wanted you, they should have taken you. And the fact that they didn't is horrible news. But in the off chance that you get in regular, you're going to increase that chance if they feel like you haven't been spurned too violently by them and that you still have only eyes for them. And you can communicate that in your letter of continued interest, amongst other stuff like updates and all the other good stuff. So definitely, even if you don't work with me for a strategy session where I'm reviewing your letter of continued interest, watch that video from 2 years ago. You can find it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/collegemeister. And that advice will help you as you wrap up your letter of continued interest. Oh, hello. How are you? Someone says, hello, Mr. Meister. Hi, Mr. Meister. That's very kind of you. Someone still actually says hello. As a white non-native speaker, let me see. As a white non-native speaker, how much will applying as a Chinese major will help me, make me stand out? Is it just seen as another major? Well, that's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting question. I would say that you're a non-native speaker. Are you American? That's a really interesting question. Non-native speaker. I don't know what the non-native speaker has to do. Well, non-native speaker of Chinese or English. That's the question. Whatever the case is, if you're white and you want to major in Chinese, good for you. Chinese, I don't think is like a highly undersubscribed major at this point, like Russian or German is, or like Eastern European studies. Those are the majors that could have someone at Brown sit up and say like, oh my gosh, we need to accept you. But Chinese, no, I mean, like a lot of people see where the money's going these days, and the Chinese is already in demand. I don't know how much being white has anything to do with it. What's more important to be compelling is, does it seem like you're just picking Chinese randomly, or do you actually have resume items or extracurricular activities that relate to the Chinese? Or does it look like you're just lying? Okay, you're American. I'm from Maryland. You're from Maryland. I'm from Maryland. Maybe we're like next door to each other right now. And I want to study international relations security, but also want to focus on China. Well, that's good for you. That actually makes sense. It sounds like you've been giving this thought, and that's fine. Yeah, you're obviously a non-native Chinese speaker, and maybe you'll work at NSA near both of us soon enough in 4 years. But whatever the case may be, I think what's more important is that you create an application that's compelling, as believable, that you're someone who's given this a lot of thought, and you believe marrying the international relations side, the international affairs side with the Chinese side is like a 1-2 punch for your ultimate career goals, which will be to hopefully harness or deploy that Chinese language in international settings, whether it be diplomatically or for business or something, because, there's a lot of stuff going through China these days, and Chinese or Mandarin will be increasingly probably used in economic dealings in Asia. It seems like, the American sphere of influence is becoming all of the Western Hemisphere, whereas the Chinese sphere of influence is like all of Asia at this point. So, or at least that's probably what's going to happen. Nothing you're saying doesn't seem like it could work. Again, it's all going to have to be supported, though, by articulate essays or personal statements or supplemental essays, and hopefully clubs, activities, extracurricular activities throughout your high school career that prove that this isn't just something you rolled out of bed thinking on in October of your senior year, but actually that you have proof in the pudding, as they used to say. That's an old saying. Is the proof in the pudding? I hope that answered your questions. Okay, there's another question. Thank you for the explanation. Okay, well, that's for the international. It's all about the money. Yes, CINO. Yes. Remember, they call it rhinos for Republicans name only. That's just one of the ENOs that exist, or INOs. CINO. Keep that in mind. There's so many CINOs that are ostensibly American, but they're not. So like many of these schools, like Columbia, I would make the argument that Columbia may already be majority international, even though like the numbers say that it's probably like 40% international. It may be already international, over 50%, because anywhere between 5 and 10% of the American students at Columbia are actually, they never lived in the United States until they go to Columbia. They're living abroad. Their parents are both foreign or non-Americans, and they just got that passport when they were born here, and then they left. That's it. They left, and then they came back here for undergrad or law school or whatever. All right, so next question. Stanford has deferral form due February 15th. Not sure if in addition to the local LOCI. Yeah, so that's probably the same thing. They just call it a deferral form because they don't speak in like the language of admissions. They don't want to like scare you by calling it something like a LOCI. Like it seems crazy, like loco in Spanish. No, it's the same thing. The deferral form, but I would still try to get it in by like the end of January, the latest. I like to be prompt. I don't like to rush because like a lot of kids, when they're my clients and they get deferred, like they're calling me that night and they're saying, Craig, let's do the deferral form. It's December 15th. And at that point, I'm like, on my back. I can't even do any more editing. So I'd say I will not help you on the 15th with your deferral form or your letter of continued interest because I'm exhausted. I don't want to work again until after the new year. And that generally is something I hold true to. But even if I was willing to work on December 15th, no one in admissions is working. They're already out the door. So they definitely don't care about getting a letter of continued interest or a deferral form from you in December, because in many cases, your first semester grades are not even available yet. They do want to give you time to reflect to make sure you even want to keep applying to that school regular. Maybe you've gotten into somewhere else early action by the time late January, early February comes around, like Michigan or UVA or UNC or something. So I think that's smart that Stanford actually says, don't even send it to us, or it's not even due till February 15th. That's fair. That's actually believable because, you just got deferred. So they don't want to read about you again anytime soon. They'll probably read about you at the tail end of their review process for regular. So they're going to read you again in February at maybe at Stanford. But I like to be prompt is my point. You balance sort of the fact that like you don't want to rush it out. You want to reflect with the fact like you don't want to let it drag on too much. Most students' first semesters are over by the 20th or so of January. So I think that the 20th of January should be a nice internal deadline. Even if the school doesn't need it from you that day, you should be finished your letter of continued interest by the 20th of January. Even if California resident Stanford says that they don't want that form from you until February. All right, thanks for the advice. Oh, well, that's very nice. My son's dream school. Good luck. Good luck. I wish you good luck at Stanford. Everyone needs it at Stanford. Great to see you. I'm alive. Yes, I'm alive. I have not been on camera for a while. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much. I know you're seeing me from a different angle than normal. I'm sitting on this lovely chair in a lovely room with a corner right behind me. So I'm like here in the corner. All right. I'm dancing on my own, as they say. Didn't Robin have a song? I'm dancing on my own. Look at me. I'm in the corner. I don't know what the lyrics are, but I think it's something like that. So here I am in the corner, sitting all alone, dancing on my own. I think Gilbert O'Sullivan, he had All Alone Again, Naturally. That's another song that I remember. Again, I'm an anachronism. I don't know why I'm still doing college admissions coaching after all these years. Most people who were doing it when I did it are gone. I'm still doing it. And it's a young field. Most people who work in the actual college admission side, they're in there in their 20s, they're out, they're doing sales or having babies or whatever in their 30s and 40s, and they never look back. But a small percentage of people actually stay in admissions. And God love them. The people who stay in admissions on the college side, I don't know how you do it. It's exhausting. On the high school side, it's easier because at least, you don't have to do as much traveling. And I've of course mostly worked on the high school side and the college admissions coaching side. The college admissions coaching side is the best because, you have your own schedule if you're self-employed like myself or like me. And that's the best, I think. But even in the world of college admissions coaching, a lot of people get burned out after 20 years. The fact that I'm celebrating my 20th anniversary, I don't know how I'm doing it. I don't know why I stick around because I get more cynical every year about this. Yes, let's go Ravens. Thank you. Good luck, Vaughn, if that's your name, 24. I know it's early, but have you discerned anything from early decision this cycle? Texas AU Tiger asks. Yeah, I've discerned that it's more corrupt than ever before. That's what I've discerned. It's a disgusting world, college admissions. It's so disgusting. But so is the United States overall. Everything has become a racket and a scam. So, in the last 20 years, lots of things that used to be such pleasant experiences in the United States are just very unpleasant. Same thing with college admissions. It's the whole thing. It's just a racket. It started off, there used to be like a mission behind it, then it became a business, and now we're in the racket stage. So, as I said earlier in this video, I would argue that, I'm still pretty good at calling balls and strikes. I know who's going to get into 99% of the schools my kids apply to. The ones that are hardest to really peg or predict are the Ivies and like Stanford, MIT, Caltech. All the others, it's pretty, I pretty much always get it right. I always tell the kids correctly. It's the Ivies, you just never know because they like I said, their institutional priorities combined with unlimited funds create some crazy decisions every year. But what I have seen this year, mostly it's gone as I expected. It's gone basically as I expected. I have a very small sample size though. I'm just one person. I'm not Crimson Education. I'm not Ivy Wise. I know them. And many students in the past have left them and come to me because of the horrible experiences they've had with them. No offense to those. But those are big shops, one is venture capital, of course, supported and funded. Everything that venture capital gets its fingers into is ruined immediately. I am independent, and I'm not Crimson Education. I am not Ivies. I am not one of these others, top tier admissions. Oh, God, they're all lovely. I have nothing bad to say about them other than venture capital I'm very much against. But as I mentioned, most of the colleges, the Ivy League colleges themselves, are basically just hedge funds themselves. They're sort of venture capital firms in themselves with sort of courses associated with them. So the whole thing is a racket. It's all a racket. So nothing surprising me about it any longer. And I wish you the very best if you're having to deal with this. There are still some benefits to going to an Ivy League school, but it's mainly status. That's basically it. It's mainly status. Yeah. I mean, it's not no one goes to college for education anymore, right? I mean, if you really want a good education, watch YouTube videos. There's some real, like, I would make the argument you're going to learn more about Western civilization if you just, get BPC Plus and watch the entire Kenneth Clark Civilization series, than you would ever learn about Western civilization by going to an Ivy League school. I think just last week, I think the last guy who taught about Western civilization left Harvard. He went to University of Florida. So if you really cared about education, you don't need to go to an Ivy League school in many cases to get it. Now, many people delude themselves into thinking like they need to go to an Ivy League school to become a doctor. Again, that would be my last destination. If you want to become a doctor, I would just go to the easiest undergraduate school possible and do really well in pre-med prerequisite courses, and then take the MCAT, have a lot of time to study for the MCAT, get an amazing score on it, do some clinical or side, research work. You don't need to go to an Ivy League school for that. So why do you want to go to an Ivy League school? It's basically 80% status, 90% status. I mean, is education that much better at Dartmouth than it is at Michigan? No, it's not. Is it better at Maryland or is it better at Harvard? I mean, I guess it's more shishi at Harvard. It's more Gucci at Harvard. It's going to be a higher class of people. Maybe even not anymore. I mean, look at the people these schools accept. I think that's even, I don't even think that, again, you can watch my last video about QuestBridge. I want to make very clear. I feel for the poor kids who are being seduced by QuestBridge. I just think that they're wasting their time. I would rather they apply through the Common App, because in most cases, they're going to have more choices and similar financial burdens at the colleges they're going to get into through the Common App than through QuestBridge. QuestBridge, of course, is a complete scam. And I will say it until they prove me otherwise. And so I do ask again for QuestBridge to release all racial, ethnic, and gender breakdowns for QuestBridge applicants, QuestBridge finalists, and QuestBridge matches. Do that, please. If you could do that by this Monday, I would be very happy to do a live video or a tape video saying you're not a scam. But the colleges are holding on to QuestBridge as sort of their last. I mean, you saw what Winnie Soule wrote in my last video about QuestBridge. I mean, they are just felling over themselves for QuestBridge, and they're not doing it for any other reason than they really do need QuestBridge in order to achieve their institutional goals. What those institutional goals are, it's officially illegal, but they're doing it. So that's all I have to say about that right now. What do you know about United World College? Well, I know a lot about them. There are a lot of United World Colleges. Isn't there one in Montezuma, New Mexico? But there's also one in Dover and one in this country, and a lot of Asian ones now. So I'm assuming you're an IB student at a United World College as something to back your uni application. What do you mean as something to back your uni application? I don't even know what that means. What do you know about United World Colleges as something to back your uni application? I guess you would like to, does it mean it's good to apply from United World College? I guess it could. Yeah. I mean, it's a respected educational institution. If you're in the IBDP program in particular at a UWC, that may not be bad for you, but there's a lot of IB schools out there. Obviously, United World College has other benefits from you as a student, but I'm not really here to comment on high schools today. But there's some good high schools that are not a part of United World College, and there's some good United World College high schools. So I hope if you do go to a United World College, you go to a good one with good college or university advising. That would be good for you, especially if you're doing well in the IB curriculum. That's a twofer. So I hope that that's the case. Did I miss any questions? Let me see. I think, yeah, let's go Ravens again. I do. Let's go. I don't think they're going to win. They're very bad this season. I've never liked this quarterback, and I think I was telling some individuals that recently. I think this isn't enough with Jackson. I think that's enough. Do you have any idea how competitive applying as a Chinese major again? Bo, again with the Chinese. No, again, I think it's not like the most popular major. Obviously, that would be something related to STEM or business, but it's also not like one of those majors that are just pathetically undersubscribed right now, like a Russian. So I would say that they got demand. There's demand for Chinese majors. Um, so again, it depends on the school, how many kids are applying to Chinese. Hi, I'm from Morocco. What? Thank you for joining me. Are you actually in Morocco right now? Because it's late there, right? Is choosing an entrepreneurship undergraduate major instead of a more traditional business administration major likely to improve my chances of admission at universities like University of Miami? Again, it's all about context. If you have a lot of entrepreneurship related stuff on your resume or in your activities page, that would read as very authentic and believable that you would want to go study entrepreneurship at Miami or at Babson or whatever. Obviously, Babson's amazing for entrepreneurship. But if you're just doing it purely as a cynical strategy play, I don't think it helps that much. I mean, I'd also make the argument of all the business majors, entrepreneurship is probably the worst one to do in college because the people teaching, if they're any good at entrepreneurship, they're not going to be teaching. They would be an entrepreneur themselves. They would be like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Zuckerberg. They would be out making millions, if not billions of dollars. Instead, they're teaching for a salary at University of Miami, entrepreneurship. How good of an entrepreneur are they? They aren't. That's crazy. How can they teach entrepreneurship? So now with that said, I mean, there's obviously better entrepreneurship programs at some schools than others, but that would be one of the more sketchy majors I think I would ever. I mean, again, I have kids apply for entrepreneurship, but like even at Wharton, like why are they teaching at Wharton and not actually an entrepreneur? That doesn't make any sense. If they're such a good entrepreneur, they should be making millions of dollars. They shouldn't be at Wharton. So I don't know. The whole thing about entrepreneurship doesn't make sense, but good luck if you're applying to Miami. I mean, Miami's a great place to start a business. You know, there's no income taxes in Florida. And a lot of international people, you know, it's basically South America in many quarters there. Though maybe the Venezuelan population will shrink now. I don't know. Maybe it will get bigger. I mean, probably if the history is any guide, even more Venezuelans will now move to Weston and the Miami-Dade area. But I guess the thinking goes that maybe some will move back. But they won't. They won't. Who wants to move back? Like once America has its claws into you, that you never leave. Hi, do you think this year is the easiest to get into a top 20 university versus? That's a really great question, Landon Davies. I was going to even do a video, like taped video, like where I actually sound like I'm professional and everything and talking in a very articulate manner, not like today where I'm just like literally diarrhea of the mouth. But I was going to do a video about that maybe in the next week or two. I actually think that it's easier than ever to get into one of the top 20 universities. And you may say, how's that possible, Craig? Well, the number of teenagers is dropping in the United States in particular, though that's being supplemented by all the international demand. But the real reason it's easier to get in is because no one can talk or write or think anymore. Because AI is basically a crutch everyone's been using for a few years now, teenagers in particular, and because English instruction has been so pathetic for a generation, if not more, probably 2 generations, the vast majority of people cannot string 2 sentences together, even if they're capable of getting a 1500 on the SAT. So as a result, lots of people who think they should be able to get into really great colleges and have no hook or no connection or do not fit a particular demographic need at that institution are going to get blown out of the water when the college sees how badly they write or that they use AI to write their entire essays. So if you actually have learned to think critically and therefore communicate effectively, it's easier than ever to get into college because you're one of the last few who can do that. But unfortunately, most people can't do that. So yes, it's easier than ever to get into a top university if you can think critically and are smart and can write critically well and persuasively, personally and persuasively, but who can do that? Very few can. It's so painful for me to work with students every passing year, not because they're not great students. The students are great, but they're definitely diminished versions of what they would be had they grown up 20, 30 years earlier and actually received a good education and from English teachers who taught them about English as opposed to whatever they teach now. What do they teach in English class? Like social emotional learning, or current events, or English is always the class that gets taken over by a week about drug abuse or a week about health or sex ed or something. So English gets ruined at the high school level because that is the class that is always being taken over by a special announcement. So even if you have a good English teacher, which is very rare, nothing against a lot of them actually are good. They know English well. They just are very, they don't want to really teach English, or the school doesn't allow them to teach English. So for all those reasons, English instruction is so bad that no one knows how to write. And as long as essays are still part of this process and critical thinking is part of this process, and you've never learned how to think critically in history or English class, and then you're applying to an Ivy League school, even if you're able to regurgitate facts on the SAT or whatever knowledge on the SAT as it relates to the sections on the SAT or the ACT, you still really can't write well in most cases. It's very rare. I would say 10% of my kids are really good writers now. Whereas I would say 10 years ago, 30, 40% were good writers. And I would say 20 years ago, 50 or 60% were good writers. Like you could actually be like an average kid and know how to write 20 years ago. Now, if you're an average kid, you do not know how to write. You just don't. You can't know. They don't teach it and you can't grasp it. And all these tools exist to prevent you from ever having to do it. So as a result, it's harder for you to get into college than ever before. You never bring in an Ivy League college anyway, if you're average. But even if you're a strong student, if you've been using AI to write your English and history papers for the last 3 or 4 years, you have no chance of getting into a good college because you can't write without cheating. It may get over on your history or English teacher, but it doesn't work at the Ivy League schools in many cases. So now they might get rid of essays. I think they will soon. I think they'll just do videos. I think what's going to happen is everyone's going to be like Goucher College. You've never heard of Goucher College, but Goucher College is a college in Maryland that I think requires or recommends you upload a video. And so I think that's all. I think that's what's going to eventually happen in a few years because of this TikTok generation. No one knows how to write. No one knows how to think. All they know how to do is give good face or mog, as they say. So they're just going to do videos. And that will be great for colleges too, because they'll just look at your face and they'll accept you based off how you look, which is all they want to do anyway. They don't really want to judge you based off of your character or your intellectual abilities they just really want to look at, are you symmetrical? And also, what color are you? And what is your affect? What sort of gender or sexual minority you are. So that's really, they want that live evidence. And oftentimes it comes across in the video, right? So that's what I think is going to happen anyway. They would prefer videos. They just have to perfect it in a way where they don't have to interview you live. They just need to do it in a way that's very systematic and treating you like a cattle. So as long as they can get videos uploaded by the tens of thousands, they'll all convert to videos soon enough. And essay writing will go the way of the typewriter and the letter. And that will be, I think, sad. I would prefer it go to timed essays, because then you can actually see how the student really thinks on his feet or her feet, and without AI, like a video of you typing and not opening another window to have AI write it for you. That I think would be right. That would actually bolster writing instruction. But since English teachers don't teach writing anymore, or English in many cases, and no one wants to learn English, we're going to this sort of pre-literate or situation where as long as you can just push a button on a phone and video yourself for 5 minutes, that's enough for probably Ivy League colleges in the next 10 years. We'll see. They'll all be like Goucher College. And that's basically what most colleges are like anyway now, but they have a sort of a air that they're maybe more impressive than Goucher College. Goucher College was one of the first colleges that started a campus in a prison. And since we're all sort of living in a prison now anyway, because there's no public safety in the United States, it just goes to figure that all the Ivies and all the selective colleges will eventually become more like Goucher College. Then Goucher College will become more like the Ivies or selective college. So we're all sort of descending to the level of Goucher College. All right. Hi, do you think this year is the easy? I said that already. Okay. How does Carnegie Mellon University acceptance rates, in your point of view, for STEM majors other than computer science, such as math, compared to difficulty to get versus you too can't write. No offense, Danny or whatever your name is. No one can write coherently, and you can't even do it in 3 lines. No offense, but you can't, and this doesn't make any sense compared to difficulty to get versus the Ivies or MI. No, it's hard. So if you got into CMU, which I'm not surprised that you can't seem to write, but you probably did get in because they judge. Talk about international again. Carnegie Mellon basically is a foreign concern at this point. I think they also have a Middle Eastern campus, Georgetown. I think these are international organizations. They're not American in any way anymore. They may be in Pittsburgh, so it looks sort of American in Pittsburgh, but Carnegie Mellon is an international school. It's mostly international students, particularly at the graduate level. But even at the undergraduate level, like I said, many CNOs go to Carnegie Mellon too. So how does that compare? I would say that Carnegie Mellon computer science is very top of the line, right? It's supposed to be at least. And I think that it's right up there with the MITs and Stanfords of the world. Those who know that computer science at Carnegie Mellon is really good. So are the arts at Carnegie Mellon. They're pretty good too. I know some really amazing performers, people who go into acting, go to Carnegie Mellon. So Carnegie Mellon's always been very siloed. It's a very sort of unusual college. The people don't mix well at Carnegie Mellon. There's like the actors, the artists on one side, then there's like the business students on the other, and then on this corner, like with me, there's the computer science students. No one mixes nicely at Carnegie Mellon. It's a very ghettoized culture at Carnegie Mellon. There's no unity. And that's also obviously promoted by the fact that since it's so science and STEM heavy, like the science students generally are just there for business. They're not like social. They're in many cases antisocial. So it becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy. I did a video about Johns Hopkins Johns Hopkins is similar in some ways to Carnegie Mellon, but it's obviously much more pre-med dominated, whereas Carnegie Mellon at least has, some other things going on than just science. But yeah, no, it's very impressive. So did you get in? I hope you got in. If you didn't get in, good luck if you want to go to Carnegie Mellon. I haven't had a guy go for computer science recently. I had a girl go to Carnegie Mellon a couple of cycles ago for business. And I think she's happy. Was very fortunate and accepted early to Stanford. Well, congratulations. Really appreciate your I'm happy. Congratulations. You are fortunate to get into Stanford. You must have done something right. It's not just luck. You probably really did something right on your application. So congratulations. You must be a pretty good student, or you must have a lot of money, or both. So whatever the case is, I wish you the very best at Stanford. I hope you go because it's early action. Maybe you play the field. Maybe you get to Harvard and you won't even go now. I don't know. Yes, it's almost 1 a.m. in Morocco. Yes, and you're right. Thank you for the advice. Are you still up with me? I don't know. In any case, thank you for joining me. I think it will just be all interviews and not video. No, they're not going to do interviews because that takes work. No one wants to work at all. They just want AI to do the work for them. And that's true on both the kid side, the student side, but also the admissions officer side. So no, they're not going to do interviews at all. They're going to have AI probably do the pre-read of the video, the TikTok reel or whatever you're going to submit. And then 2 people will watch the video with popcorn. And then they'll just pick a number like 5 if it's good, 1 if it's bad, and then you'll decide if you get into Harvard that way in 5 or 10 years. We'll see. I think they will get rid of the essays because no one knows how to write. No one knows how to write. Even I, who is a really good writer, I was using AI a little over the summer for another purpose, and I realized like my thinking capacity was going down when I was using AI. So I have sworn off of AI because it's too tempting. So you can imagine someone who's never learned how to write English, who's been using AI for the last 5 years for middle school and high school, they'll never develop that part of their brain to write. So I promise you, there will be no writing in a few years at Ivy League schools to get in, and that's sad. I think unless something dramatic happens, like maybe like some fundamentalist regime comes in the United States and like removes technology from our lives. But most likely, writing's going bye-bye, and therefore higher level thinking is going bye-bye. And in 1,000 years, people will wonder, how did people build skyscrapers in this part of the world? Like we're in, New York, like who had the technology? How did people think? How did people send men to the moon? Already people, we can't get people to the moon anymore because the people who got men to the moon didn't grow up using calculators. And so the same goes to figure. We're not going to be able to get people to write essays and therefore build skyscrapers or do anything impressive in 30, 40, 70 years, because we have raised a whole generation of people to go to their computer to think for them, write for them, do everything for them, and they don't know how to do anything but indulge in guilty pleasures like eating chocolate or watching their favorite television show, sleeping late, doing drugs, playing around, doing a lot of things I can't mention here. All right. ED2 Chicago. Does it make sense? Well, maybe it does make sense. It could make. Look, ED2 Chicago is far better than EA Chicago and far better than regular Chicago. So if you will be happy to go to Chicago, yes, ED2 makes a lot of sense. If that is a school you will be jumping up and downs and doing somersaults for getting into in a few weeks, then do it, because your chances of getting in regular are basically not. They don't exist. You have no chance in most cases of getting regular. It's very hard to get into Chicago regular, and it's very hard to get into Chicago early action. So, whenever I have a kid debating early action versus early decision 1 or early decision 2 at Chicago, I always try to get them to do early decision 1. Chicago, if you watch my videos, you know this. If you have the money and you did a pre-college program now at Chicago, you can do very early decision. They don't just have early decision 1 and early decision 2. They basically have early decision 0. And if you look at, I don't think it was Ransom Everglades, I think it was Pinecrest in Florida, like 5-6 kids from Pinecrest, I think, got into at least, if not more, got into Chicago by like Halloween. That was pre-early decision. That was early decision 0, or that was what I call very early decision. And that's because if you pay Chicago to do a pre-college program, either in person or online, they now have a policy where you can apply before early decision. Didn't I say earlier in this call, it's a racket. The whole thing is a racket. So you want to avoid it. Chicago wants your money. Chicago wants you to commit. They want a high yield. So they want those very early decision 1, and early decision 2 kids. Early decision 2 is still not as good as early decision 1 or early decision, very early decision, but it's still better than regular. So I would do that. Calank 4306. Definitely early decision 2 is a good idea. How do you think admissions officers will use AI in reviewing of applications at selective colleges? Ronit says that. They're testing the waters now at some schools like Virginia Tech and some other places. We'll see how that works. I don't know. I mean, I think that some schools are using it already to sort of, I think UNC is already using it as well to sort of screen for grammar and other stuff. So it's going to be a mixed bag, a sort of patchwork quilt, as they say. But I would assume that in 5-10 years, they'll fire all the admissions. They're already paid so little, by the way. The admissions officers would be better working at TGI Fridays in terms of finances for themselves. They'd be better off at like a midline restaurant in any mid-range city in terms of their finances than working in admissions office. They pay admissions officers so little, even at really good schools. The reason someone wants to be an admissions officer is not for the money. The reason someone wants to be an admissions officer is for the power. They want the power. They want the power to decide who is the it kids in society, and therefore the people who ultimately are the status driven people, and the people in politics, the people in business. That's why you want to become an admissions officer at a selective college or university. Why you are an admissions officer at a non-selective school, I have no idea. I mean, it's probably just because you can't do sales. If you were good at sales, you would go into like the mortgage. You would do something. You would go into real estate. You would make money. But none of these colleges pay anything. So, but the reason I bring that up is not to offend admissions officers, because there are many lovely people. The reason I'm bringing it up is even that is too much money. Colleges want to cut fat. So they want just fully AI readers in the next 10 years. So they'll fire all the admissions team other than the vice provost of admissions, which will be like a Whitney Soule type at all the colleges. It will be one woman paid $250,000 to $750,000 in charge of a team of AI bots. That will be sort of the composition of most admissions offices. So eventually that's what they'll do. They'll do that for professors too, if they can get away with it. They'll do it for any role that actually had a value in the past. They'll do that first. They'll get rid of the valuable roles first, like admissions officers who have to be very meticulous, and also professors who actually have to teach. They won't get rid of the back-end administration. Those will be the last people to lose their jobs because of AI, because that's really why many colleges now exist, is just to keep those people employed. It's not to educate, and it's not to actually accept strong students. It's everything. It's the inversion of what a college or university really is supposed to be, is what the university exists for. So because of that, I assume that most admissions officers will be fired within the next 10 to 15 years, and they'll run a much tighter, leaner admissions team. And maybe even eventually the Whitney Soulets will lose their jobs. And Grok will just run. Well, not Grok. It can't be Grok, because all the admissions officers and offices are already off Twitter or X. So it will be ChatGPT. It will be a politically correct AI will run the admissions office, not a Grok, because that's politically incorrect AI. And even Whitney Soulets could eventually be out of work, but not for a long time. The first people to lose their jobs in admissions officers will be like the ones who were just hired last year. They'll be the ones to lose their job first, or the one who somehow has kept his job or her job for 20 years. They're making too much. Now they're making, God forbid, 75,000 as opposed to 70. They'll be the first one cut, so that they can have more staffers making 40,000, which is like basically slave wages in New York. But that is what they'll do, is because they just want to save as much money as possible. Okay. Any insight into the selectivity of Vanderbilt's Peabody School of Education's undergraduate teacher education majors for regular decision? I don't have insight into that. I'm not saying that sardonically or sarcastically. I really don't. I would say that education is not exactly an in-demand field. Like I said, that's not where the money is really right now. So I can't imagine it would be too selective. And I do recall that Michigan now has a direct entry to its education school, where they didn't have that before, because they want more people to pursue education, and they don't want it to be such a hurdlesome or complicated process to get into the education track. But I'm not an expert on Vanderbilt's Peabody School of Education undergraduate teacher education majors, but they sound nice, and I wouldn't doubt that they are pretty good. But I don't know their selectivity relative. Again, I can't imagine they're as selective as engineering at Peabody or at Vanderbilt. But I don't have someone who's going to work with me to go into education. Let's be honest. I cost a lot of money. So I don't see as much volume. No offense, again, to the education, because I am an educator. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I got a master's in education administration. I myself fancy myself as an educator when I educate students and parents every year through the college admissions process. So trust me, I'm from a family of, my mom is an educator. So I feel very strongly that educators should exist in our society. The problem is that the powers that be in education don't think very highly of educators. And that's why they destroy the education major in most schools. And the education major is basically just a political major in disguise right now. I mean, it's not education as a major. It doesn't really, I mean, does that exist? I mean, even education schools were the first thing to rot over in higher education. That's now spread to the entire institution. But it started, the real problem for education started in the education schools. So if we could reform the education schools, we could maybe make the United States actually a country where we could become great again, as someone said, make America great again. But the education schools need some making great of themselves at this point. But without reform within education schools, I don't think we're going to make things too much better in this country, and certainly not as it relates to English language instruction, which is definitely nosediving from everything I've seen. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years. Every year I work with kids capable of getting 1400s and 1500s on the SAT, or 34s, 35s, 36s on the ACT. I look at their scores. I congratulate them. Yes, these tests have gotten far easier over the last 20 years, but that still doesn't explain why these kids cannot write any longer. They can't write any longer because they use an iPhone all the time. Now they use AI, they use Grammarly, they use autocomplete when even writing emails. So they never have to take agency or ownership of their thinking, of their writing. And English classrooms should be where that's happening, but it's not happening. So that's why editing essays is becoming more and more painful with every passing year for me. And I've had to raise my rates, because it's really really, it's like a hardship post. If you work at the State Department, like a hardship post is like, Papua New Guinea or something. Being an essay editor, helping kids with their essays is like a hardship post at this point, because I, in a few weeks, am being asked to fix what it took 12 years to do to you in K through 12 education. And they did a lot to you, let me tell you. And it wasn't teach you how to write English. It was not teach you how to think or write English. It was everything, it seems like, other than teach you how to think. It was all about teaching you what to think and how not to read English, or how not to write English. Again, a lot of kids don't even read anymore, let alone write. And that also is a problem. If you can't read, of course you can't write. And if you never get assigned long passages on the SAT, they got rid of the long passages. There's no long passages anymore. So you can't even, write. Most kids can't read a few pages without going on TikTok. So there's no attention span. And if you have no attention span, you can't think critically, you can't write critically. Okay. So I'm sorry I did not answer your question, Sergeant Slender. The cost for an upper middle class person to attend Vanderbilt, Northwestern, Rice, etc., is so high that early decision is a very scary gamble. Well, yeah, though I think all the schools you just named do promise to meet 100% of what they deem to be your demonstrated need. So as long as you're like a typical applicant and you trust the college, which is a big question mark, right? You should assume that you will get some need-based aid if you get in, if you're a domestic applicant. Now, most colleges do not give need-based aid to international applicants, though obviously the very top of the top have the money to even do that. But yes, I know it's scary, but I still recommend early decision to many middle class and individuals who have less money than middle class families, because if the college meets 100% of need, demonstrated need, and it's a relatively typical financial situation for that family, and there's not like at least hidden assets somewhere or something, like if it's a typical W-2 employee, especially, you're going to get aid. You're going to get most likely aid. And there is that carve out for domestic students that if you don't get the aid, you can actually break the ED agreement if you don't get the aid you need. So I wouldn't be too scared of doing early decision. I mean, you have to feel like you have freedom in this. Like, you can't feel like you just have to wait obviously it is now regular decision season other than the ED2 kids, but I'm all about early decision. I push kids to do early decision as long as, the family understands, that they're going to have to apply for need-based aid. And as long as the family goes in eyes wide open, does that college meet 100% of need-based aid? If the college doesn't promise to meet 100% of need-based, your family need, then no, I understand you should not do early decision. But many of the top colleges, beyond even the Ivies, will meet 100% of demonstrated family need. So don't be scared of early decision. My scenarios are too scary. What scenarios are scary? Oh, about AI? Oh, about early decision. Oh, well, yeah, regular. You'll probably get rejected from Chicago. Yeah, it's hard to get into Chicago regular. From my son's high school, a few blocks from Stanford, 3 girls, faculty kids, legacy, got in. That's not surprising. Yeah, they take care of their own. And one kid, communism for thee, not for me. And one kid, no connection, his best pal, got in. Well, congratulations to that one kid. It was an eye-opener on the priority of legacy. Yes. Well, I thought legacy was going to be gotten rid of, but these colleges are so craven that they were able to get rid of, many of them kept legacy. A few got rid of legacy, but most did not. Yeah. So legacy matters, but yes, even more powerful than legacy is current employment, because, they protect their own. Like, we protect this house. In this house, we believe in doing whatever it takes to protect the people in this house. That is basically that should be the motto of most of these institutions. So, they're just self-serving institutions. But I mean, a lot of organizations are self-serving. I think they used to sort of gussy it up with, no, we really care. But no, that's all gone by the wayside. No one cares about actually even pretending anymore. No, Stanford, all these schools take care of their own as much as they can. And, but even that's not a guarantee. I mean, it's not a guarantee because there's so much demand for these schools. So anyway, I do wish you guys the best on regular decision. If you're dealing with that, a regular decision is like being fed to the sharks. Um, I don't recommend it. I don't recommend regular decision. I recommend avoiding it at all costs. So I had a lot of kids this year listen to me, and thank goodness they did, because the majority of my kids put out early action and ED applications, and the minority of my kids' applications are regular. Because who wants to be fed to the sharks regular? That is what regular decision is. Yeah, a lot of kids will get in regular, but statistically, it's not good. It's not good. Now, a lot of people say, Craig, you're wrong. Early decision, it really benefits the legacies and the athletes, and it does that too. But early decision also has it's a smaller competitive pool, and if you have a really good application, you do stand out in a smaller pool. And if you're as long as your grades and scores and writing are still strong. But again, that's easier said than done. Most kids cannot write or think critically anymore. So definitely not persuasively. So just because you have good scores and grades does not mean that's going to be enough. You still have to communicate effectively in your extracurricular resume, your activities list, and in the short statements, or definitely the Common App essay. But when you apply regular, it's much more like playing the Mega Millions or the Powerball. So many more kids are applying, and the colleges will pick these very idiosyncratic applicants to round out their class so that they can say it's sort of like Noah's Ark. They can have two or one of every animal, right, on the ark. So they don't want two of anything regular. So as a result, you sure as heck better stand out if you're going to get in regular decision, because there's not room on Noah's Ark for you for regular decision. If they've already got two giraffes, they don't need a third giraffe. They already got their two giraffes early decision. So now you have to be like some sort of species that they didn't already accept early decision. And that's hard to be. That's really hard to be when so many kids are applying regular decision. So I avoid it at all costs. I actually find waitlist round easier at some Ivies than regular. I had a student last year get rejected from basically all the Ivies until the waitlist round, at which point the student got into two Ivies, which is so interesting. I mean, waitlist is interesting too, because of course all bets are off. The big dirty secret about waitlist land is that at that point, many colleges that are need blind are no longer need blind. And so, I mean, they get away with murder in the waitlist round. So anything is possible. Anything is possible. Hi, I applied to Warden early decision 1 and was deferred. I'm so sorry about that. What did you believe what did I believe my chances are now? What do I believe? Oh, well, your chances are low because you just got deferred. If you were anything so special, no offense, to at least in the eyes of the powers that be at Warden. Again, this is all beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you were in any way impressive to them, they would have taken you right early. So it's a very bad sign. No offense. They did not. It's like the Bachelor or the Bachelorette. They did not give you the rose. So you should start searching for another suitor at this point. But there's a chance. There's a chance. Did you just delete your question? I think you did. Maybe you were offended. There's a chance that you could get in. There's a chance, but it's low. So hopefully you have a good letter of continued interest, and you can make a compelling case that you were unable. Look, the Warden supplemental essay stinks now. Back in the day, I did not like Eric Furta. I'll be honest. I think he's now working in as an associate director of college counseling at like a private school on the main line. But Eric Furter was the dean of admission at Penn before Whitney was. And I mean, look, again, he basically all he wanted to be was on the Today Show, and he got on the Today Show quite a bit. But and he has a podcast. I think he probably still has the podcast. But at least when Eric Furter was there, they still had the old 650 word essay, which was basically, why do you want to go to Penn? Why are we a good fit for you, and why are you a good fit for us? But Whitney has completely gone the other direction. Whitney, and he even started changing it, but Whitney has gone even further, with a little, what did I call it? The love note or the thank you note. Now we all have to be gracious. We all have to show our thankfulness and our, that's a wasted 200 words. So we were a 650 word essay. Now we're down to what, 200 word essays? And so you have a Warden essay that's down to 200 words. And then basically why the community pen essay is 200 words. So the good thing about your letter of continued interest for Warden is that maybe now you can finally make a direct case for why you were a good fit for Warden and why Warden is a good fit for you without having to answer that ridiculous question about what is the current event topic you're following and how does it relate to your interest in business. Because that really derails your ability to make the case for yourself as directly for Warden as the letter of continued interest will hopefully allow you to do. And hopefully the letter of continued interest also is augmented by more details about getting more straight A's or some other impressive extracurricular accomplishments at some point. And like I said in the beginning of this video, if you can add in the first paragraph that yes, you were heartbroken when you got deferred, but your heart has mended itself, and that you will attend if admitted regular. Obviously, they can't hold you to it, but just saying that, I think is powerful. I think it's powerful to say, I will attend if admitted. Now, don't say that if it's a lie. But if it's true, say it. If you're going to definitely still go to Warden, if you get in regular, say it in your letter of continued interest. All right. And then he said, what are some of the ways you recommend I can differentiate myself in addition to the letter? So there's nothing else you can really do other than pray. Do you believe in God? I would pray. I would pray. This is the time to start developing the relationship with God, because there's nothing else you can do. There's nothing else you can. I mean, obviously, if you've already gotten really bad grades for the first semester, you're basically done for. But because your first semester grades should also be sent by your college counseling office. So if you got pretty bad grades or even weaker than normal grades first semester, it's over. It's probably over. They already deferred you after all. So that's like another nail in your coffin, right? Don't hurt yourself, please. No, this is not worth it. It's not worth it. The college admissions is not worth it. So please, none of this is serious. No one died in college admissions. So always remember that. It's not like going into medicine where like you could really kill someone on the operating room table. This is just college admissions. It's just fun and games. Don't worry. Don't worry. Your life will go on. You just won't go to Penn. You won't go to Wharton. And that's okay. Because honestly, West Philadelphia is not so safe. I went there myself. I went to Penn for 4 years. And even in the Disney World early 2000s, it wasn't so safe. And now, oh my God, it's very unsafe. I don't know if I would want my child to go to Wharton right now because, Philadelphia is not, Larry Krasner, please. No, it's murder. Oh my God. No, I mean, even if you don't get murdered, you are, don't go out alone at night. And it's just, you're going to be victimized in some way by the crime that exists throughout Philadelphia. So just look at it as a blessing if you don't get into Wharton. Maybe you'll go to Elon or something for business. Or maybe Arizona. I don't know. No, you probably don't have to go to Elon or Arizona, but maybe you'll go to Case Western for business. Or maybe Cleveland's not that great either. But I like Case Western, don't get me wrong. But maybe you'll go to what's Carnegie Mellon for business. I mean, it's not nearly as fun as you think Penn is, right? I mean, it's definitely more depressing. Though Pittsburgh is safer, though again, nothing is safe anymore. So I don't know, but whatever the case may be, I do wish you the best. And hopefully your letter of continued interest is written not by AI, but by you and is heartfelt and does share new information. New information. Don't just regurgitate what you said before. Share new information. A big shout out to your extracurricular resume course. Oh, well, thank you, Cindy. My daughter's CV was set up nicely for her early action applications at several private universities accepted the CV. Well, I'm happy that CV worked for her, that resume worked for her. I do have that course, How to Build an Extraordinary Extracurricular Resume. I think it's linked in this video's description. It's only $33, I think. Did I raise the price? I don't know. Maybe I raised it. No, I think it's 33. And it's a really good course. It does help you conceptualize how to sort of organize thematically your resume. And it can help you even on the activities page of the Common App. And if a college accepts a resume, you'd be surprised at how few kids submit a resume still when they are invited to submit a resume. I mean, yes, Cornell requires it now, but no school really other than Cornell requires a resume. I mean, maybe a few do. But I do think Cornell's right to require it. It'll make you jump through another hoop. But I don't even think all the majors at Cornell require it. But anytime a college allows you to upload a resume, I think it should be required. But I guess they don't require it because kids are too dim to figure out like what to do. And maybe they just don't have much more to say. They don't want to be forced to read more than they have to read. But if you can do a good resume, it can be a real value added to your application. So I'm happy that worked for you. If you were deferred to Georgetown early action, what do you recommend emphasizing on the letter of continued interest? Georgetown offers the why Georgetown specific college essay, so most applicants have already made their case for Georgetown. Well, you need to say something new that's going to make them take a serious second look at you. So you're going to have to attack this from a different angle now, because what you tried initially has not worked. So now is the time to put your thinking cap on and think about how could you be in the sort of same neighborhood, but hitting it from a different angle. I would say that, maybe deploy current events in some way, potentially depending on what your major was, to re-emphasize why studying specifically in DC and at Georgetown is so important for your unique goals, professionally, and not even just professionally after you graduate, but maybe even for your 4 years and how you want to grow as a student and as a person, and the resources available to you at Georgetown. You got to make that link. It can't just be all about you and what you want and what your goals are. It also has to connect with specific resources that exist at Georgetown and make Georgetown understand the things that differentiate Georgetown from other schools in DC or other schools of that rank. Now, I also did a Georgetown video, I think earlier in 2025, where I predicted, and I could be wrong, but I predicted that Georgetown in 5 or 10 years will have an early decision round, because now that they're joining the Common App next cycle, it's going to be more competitive to get into Georgetown than it is to get into most Ivy League schools, I think. I think Georgetown will become the shiny object on parent forums and student forums in the late 2020s. So you, hopefully, Megan, will get in just under the door closing, since you use the actual Georgetown application. But I don't know if you're going to get in. You probably won't get in, no offense, because if you got deferred, that's a bad sign. It's a bad sign. But don't take it personally. Why would you want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with you? Why would you want that? You don't. You're worth it to be wanted by where you go to college. Georgetown did not want you. Early action. Screw Georgetown. Go find someone who wants you. Now, you can still try and fight for them. Maybe they'll change their mind. I had a few years ago a girl get deferred from Duke who got in regular at Duke. But that was a very specific case. She had a very rough go of it in 10th grade, and they just wanted to make sure her grades were that was a blip. And it was a blip. She did amazing the first semester of 12th grade year, and they accepted her regular. But in most cases, when you get deferred, they're just keeping you in their orbit in case they need you. And in the case of Duke and some other schools, they didn't need you last year because they went deeper into their wait list last year. So we'll see. Now that Trump has been president for a year, I think that most of the tumult around that is over. So I don't think a lot, and unless there's like visa issues from certain countries, I don't think they're going to be huge. They have algorithms to figure this out. They always attune themselves to like how many they need to accept to get the yield they need. So again, I always say it's a really bad sign. No offense to you. You deserve to be wanted where you go. So it's a pretty, they're basically saying shop around, because we're sort of not that into you when they defer you. But take it from a different angle is what I would say, Megan. Good luck. What is your opinion on top liberal arts colleges such as Amherst, Swarthmore, and Bowdoin? They can be really good. I mean, I think actually in retrospect, I may have done better myself at a small school, because socially I was just a little less adventurous, and I think I needed a little more support and a little less overwhelming social scene than probably that existed at Penn. And so I think for social reasons, smaller schools can be better for certain personalities. But for other personalities, you need to branch out, and it becomes very claustrophobic very quickly. But the good thing about Amherst and Swarthmore's and Bowdoin's, more of the professors are invested in teaching. Whereas at schools like NYU or Northeastern or Penn's and Johns Hopkins, teaching is just one of various things they do. The research side is really important. And so you may get better professor experiences at schools like Swarthmore and Amherst and Bowdoin's than you would at big research universities like a Michigan or Wisconsin, where, the TAs, the professors, they're all being pulled in different directions. And if you're teaching undergrads, you're lucky when you get someone who really enjoys teaching undergrads. In many cases, the professor, to become a full professor, they have to have a skill set that is really not forged teaching undergrads. The skill set is surviving and publishing esoteric research that speaks to the desires of people in their field and what they want to publish. So you can imagine that type of person is usually not very not very warm or wanting to even get near an undergraduate in many cases. So at a large research institution, if they often look at like the hardship post as teaching undergraduates, which is sad. I think that's so sad, because these are our, in many cases, best, brightest, most idealistic students. I wish the professor career was one that was really geared toward teaching more and not producing research that only a handful of people will ever read. But that's not the way the world works right now. Thus, again, the racket that higher education in the United States has become. So go for it. If you like small liberal arts schools, I think that can be really good. In some cases, in a lot of cases, you get better teaching there. Not all cases, but better, more personal relationships with your professors. Oh, and regarding my question on lacrosse. Oh, was there a question I didn't see about lacrosse? Was there a lacrosse question? He won't be playing in college, maybe just club. I don't, bullish bacon. What was your question? Oh, here. My son planned to play lacrosse senior year and put it on all his UC applications. Now he may not play to focus on another sport. Do we need to tell the school they haven't sent out decisions yet? Well, you really should, but it's an extracurricular activity. It's not as important as you saying, oh, by the way, I dropped AP calculus. That you do need to notify the school of. But saying you're not playing lacrosse it's not a big deal at all relative to that. It would be a bigger deal if you were trying to get recruited for lacrosse, right? Or play even at the D3 level. But in your case, that's not the case, right? So why can't he just play lacrosse though? Like, why? Why is he pulling out his senior year? Like, that's crazy. I mean, don't do it. Just have him play lacrosse. Why would you do that? It doesn't sound like he's injured. He just wants to play another sport. Okay, I mean, whatever. Lacrosse players. No offense. I don't really like lacrosse. I could talk a lot about lacrosse. I mean, I've had lots of clients from Boys Latin in Maryland through the years, so I know a lot about lacrosse. And I myself am not a lacrosse guy. Can you tell? Like, my hair does not look like a lacrosse. All lacrosse players have the same haircut. Have you noticed this? Have you noticed? It's like a mix between like I can't say it. I'm trying to be at least somewhat polite, but I don't like the haircut. All right. But can he play lacrosse? I just haven't played lacrosse. I don't see but if you can't, but yes, you should officially notify. But it's like such a ridiculous thing to notify a UC for. They don't even get your transcript, so they're not going to notice. Don't even worry. I would not worry about notifying a UC about the fact that it's one thing if you're applying to Johns Hopkins, if you're applying for lacrosse, but you're not applying to Johns Hopkins and you're not applying for lacrosse. So the smaller the school, the more likely I'd mention it. But for a UC, they hire part-time readers. They have part-time readers that are like full-time college counselors or like retired college. They don't care. They're not going to notice. Don't worry. I would not update them on lacrosse. I would not. All right. Thank you for your advice on Wharton. I actually recently received a full tuition scholarship. That's amazing, from Fordham. Congratulations. I hope is it Lincoln Center or Rose Hill? I also applied to NYU Stern, and I was wondering if I did get in a regular decision, is it worth full? No, New York University is not worth full price unless you're loaded. I don't see how New York University could be worth it for full price. If your mom and dad make combined less than $300,000 a year, it's certainly not worth it. I would even make the argument that NYU is not worth it if your parents make between $300,000 and $500,000 per year. I just, at what point does NYU become worth it? I guess at $1 million, if your family's clearing $1 million a year, then I guess it's like a luxury item you can have. But I do not believe NYU full price is worth it. No, no, no. I don't. Is Barron even at NYU anymore? Is he even there? I don't even know if he could handle it. I don't know if he could do it. I don't know. I mean, he barely went to high school. I think it was all virtual. I don't know. But even if you're not Barron Trump, the thing about NYU is that there are many ways. It's similar to Northeastern. I mean, I'm sure NYU doesn't want me to say that out loud, but it's similar to Northeastern insofar as they give you all these different ways to get in. So I hope if you apply to New York University, you put on the application that you were willing to consider that sort of global year abroad in London, because that gives you a slightly better chance to get into Stern. And you just start in London for the first year. And then you might have even put on there, you're willing to forgo Stern altogether for the first 2 years for the liberal studies core. And maybe you do that in Florence, maybe you do that in Madrid or in Washington or even in New York, and you do, Stern later. But again, it's a money-making play. NYU just wants as many bodies funneled through their campuses as possible so that when a number of people peel off because they become cokeheads or, because they, decide they just want to be a waiter or something, or they have the money, they just decide they want to go to St. Bart's or Saint Tropez or whatever. When those people peel off or go back to Mecca or Medina or whatever, or Dubai or wherever, when those people just don't come back after winter break, or they get distracted by maybe God forbid they were in that Swiss fire or something, they just don't show up for second semester. They need at NYU the bodies back. So that's why they churn these people into these other campuses so they can churn more people in and to the dorm rooms. Every dorm room must be taken. It's like a hotel. It's like every dorm, in Union Square or in Washington Square Park, every room has to have someone, even if they're like a knife wielding maniac. Those rooms have to be taken. They used to have back in the day, NYU had a campus, not a campus, but they had a dorm all the way down on Water Street. They sold that. Yours truly lived in the NYU dorm on Water Street. The summer I worked in New York City. A lot of people don't know this about me. I worked in New York City the summer of 2003 for a news organization in New York City. I worked there, and I lived on Water Street all the way down in an NYU dorm in Water Street, but I had access, was it called the Palladium? I don't know, to the gym on 14th Street. It was a brand new gym then. So you would see me going from Water Street to 14th Street. I was taking advantage of the NYU dorms. I like that. I like meeting people in NYU. But even then, it was wild. The people, it was not so international now then, but it was still a lot of international kids. Like I said, NYU is basically majority international student now. And if you include the CNOs, as I was talking about an hour ago, it is definitely a majority international student in NYU. But it's not worth it unless you're making millions of dollars. I don't think so. No offense to NYU. It's just not, it's so much money. It is so much money. It is. It's not a bad school. It's a good school for business in particular. And there are definitely, obviously, Tisch and some other things. I personally do not believe the School of Arts and Sciences is that much to write home about for the cost, especially. Like, just go to like Stevens or go to like Fordham, like you said, or one of these other schools in the Pace. I mean, I wouldn't go to Pace probably, but if you want to be in New York, there's other options that are probably a little cheaper, at least, and you'll get more merited at, right? All right, so Colorado School of Mines. It's like a hits list of my life. A few years ago, I was working with some guys at a particular school in Europe, and they were all joking with me in the days before the deadline how they're all going to apply to the Colorado School of Mines. And I said, I think that's lovely, because they all knew how much I loved the Colorado School of Mines. But none of them wanted to go into petroleum engineering or engineering at all. They were just doing it to sort of make me laugh. But they all wanted to go into business. So you don't go to Colorado School of Mines for business. Go to Colorado School of Mines to play good D2 sports or specifically for a good return on investment, traditionally at least. Though I don't know if that's even true anymore, because all of these big tech companies now are hiring, out of the country or AI to do stuff. But traditionally, it's good. I got into Colorado School of Mines and Colorado Boulder for engineering. Which school would you recommend has a better engineering program? God, that's hard. I would say Colorado School of Mines is more renowned in on the circuit for engineering. But depending on the exact discipline of engineering, I am not an expert in engineering. And depending on what you want to do afterward or where you want to be and what type of on-campus recruiting exists for the engineering majors at one school versus the other, that would really help you clarify the answer. So you should ask the career services at Colorado School of Mines in Boulder to show you the money. And what I mean by that is, where are recent graduates from their programs in your major or engineering writ large getting their first jobs? Where are they going? Are they staying in state? Are they staying in Boulder? Are they staying in Golden? Are they going out of state? What are the big feeder organizations or businesses hiring? Do they come to campus? Do they help you at all with hiring? Or are you on your own? That's where I think the rubber really hits the road in terms of determining return on investment. Traditionally, overall, the return on investment is much better on average at Colorado School of Mines than it is at Colorado Boulder, but that's overall, considering all of Boulder's majors. I don't know if you're comparing engineering specifically at Boulder compared to overall engineering at Colorado School of Mines, if that still holds true. But if these organizations were in any way honest, which hopefully they will be since they're public, and they have to have like some opens records, like request, there has to be some transparency, whereas a lot of the private schools, there's no transparency. You should be able to march in there either in person or virtually and ask, show me the data. What are people doing 6 months out, 1 year out, 5 years out? What is their salaries? Where are they working? And that will help you determine which one is the better fit for you. But yes, Colorado School of Mines will always have a place in my heart for overall return on investment. And as one of the like 2 or 3 D2 schools I recommend. I don't recommend many D2 schools. The other 2 being Bentley and occasionally Rollins. I don't think I recommend any other D2 schools ever to anyone for any reason. I don't even know if you want to play sports, but that's neither here nor there. But it is interesting that Colorado School of Mines is a D2 school. It is interesting. All right, so good luck. That's great. It's great to have those options. Those are both good options. It also, I mean, socially, obviously, they're very different. Boulder traditionally was very, I mean, again, everything, it's all gone to pot, literally. Colorado has gone to pot, as is, New York. If you go to New York, you will get a contact high within a minute or two of being on the streets near NYU, or because it reeks of pot. You just stink of pot. It's horrible. I think I was in New York last year, and I think I then like later in the day I came back home and I was urinating. I mean, you don't want to hear this. I was going to the bathroom and I think it smelled like pot. I did not do pot when I was in New York. I never have done drugs in my life. I am not a drug. But I literally was reeking so much of pot. But that is definitely true. At least in Colorado, there's more open space and there's sunny days. Whereas now in New York City, you're really in the mix of it. There's so many pot shops. It's definitely worse in New York than in Colorado. But I say that Colorado was one of the first states to go, legalize pot. And so things are different now in Colorado than when I started recommending those schools 15, 20 years ago. But I still like both schools. Both beautiful areas, both Golden and Boulder. Very nice. Very nice. Congratulations on getting to Boulder and Colorado School of Mines. When asking to attach research abstract on the portal, does that research abstract who gets published in high school? I mean, I know some kids pay people off to get published, or they associate with these for-profit organizations that get you published officially. But no, you don't have to have a published paper. No. But if you've done a good piece of research, then attach that. That's good. That's nice. On the same lines as your comments on NYU, is MIT worth it? Well, I mean, that is MIT. Now, it's interesting. MIT just accepted some kid on I've been focusing on Quest, as you know, if you watch my videos. I've been thinking about QuestBridge a lot recently. And so, you see who QuestBridge accepts through. Even MIT is accepting on QuestBridge. And you look at the kid, and the kid is maybe not that well kept. And you question who is really getting into these schools these days? Or at least the picture didn't look great of the kid who got into MIT through QuestBridge. But okay, that's a whole other subject. Is MIT worth it for full pay? I mean, it is MIT. I mean, that you're signaling there there is still sort of this belief that MIT actually means business. They barely went test optional. They did it very briefly. They went back to being test required very quickly. So there is this gravitas associated with MIT that far surpasses MIT. I mean, NYU 30 years ago was Northeastern today. I mean, it was. So NYU is a whole different ballgame. MIT, you might want to go into debt a little for MIT, as long as you got into MIT for the right reason. Now, let's say you actually cheated to get into MIT, which is possible, or you had someone buy a building or something, and you're going to flame out after a semester or two. Then I wouldn't even burn your money, even if you're loaded, because that's not a good way to get into. You're not going to complete most likely at MIT, or you'll major in like history at MIT or something. So, I mean, but you'll always be able to have on your resume that you went into MIT. So, I mean, I would say that actually, if you're going to go into debt for a school or like pull out private loans or something, maybe MIT would be one of the few schools to do it for. Because MIT, I mean, of course, none of these schools are as good as they used to be 20 years ago. And again, this is getting back to what I was talking about in the beginning. I am an anachronism. I'm like an old man at this point. I am talking like an old man. I'm thinking like an old man. I'm from a different age, like where you actually had to write an essay without help. And you actually had to look up words in a physical dictionary. So I know I'm an anachronism. I know you can all make fun of me like I'm old, and I am. But MIT is, look, they're all going to sink. Like I said, all the colleges are becoming more like Goucher. So the last one that will become more like Goucher will be MIT. So once MIT becomes fully like Goucher, the American higher education is no longer higher education. It's just basically high school. And that's, of course, the direction we're going into anyway, but MIT will be the last one to lose its reputation, I'm assuming. I mean, yes, they were embarrassed during that whole president's testimony at the Congress a year or two ago, but not nearly as much as Penn and Harvard were. I mean, but even Penn and Harvard compared to MIT, I mean, it's like apples and oranges. I mean, Penn and Harvard, your mouth was just agape at just like, I mean, yes, the president of MIT was pretty pathetic too, but she didn't make as many mistakes as the presidents of Penn and Harvard did during that hearing. And the only way that would be possible is because that's how low the bar is at Penn. I mean, I can say this. I'm an alumnus of Penn, so I can say this. It's so sad what has become of Penn. It pains me horrible to see what Penn has become. And it starts in admission. It starts, of course, in HR and admission. If HR and admission could be reformed at all these schools, within 4 to 10 years, all of these schools could be humming again like they were, in the 50s to the 1990s. But until that happens, they are basically occupied territories of individuals who really want the power and status that their jobs have, but they don't bring with them the actual oomph, or the substance is not there. Let's just put it that way, compared to the people who used to have their roles. So, but MIT is still sort of acquitting itself nicely relative to even other the Ivies, like Harvard. I mean, so right across the street, Harvard is like so much sadder of a situation than MIT at the undergraduate level. And that's mainly because the majors, you can, there's any number of ways you can get into Harvard. You can say you're majoring in some fake major, like some liberal arts major. The liberal arts have been completely decimated over the last 30 years. I majored in history. Again, I can speak of this. I know what I'm speaking about. Whereas at least MIT, they have some the majority of the majors are more hardcore majors, like actually that require some skill. And like history, like all these, history is actually the least of the problems, like, American studies or, Chicano studies or whatever these studies. I mean, these are majors that didn't exist 20 years ago. And so they're still sort of like, earth before everything solidified, they're still like developing. So it makes sense that those majors would not be as serious of a discipline as engineering at MIT. So for all these reasons, MIT, I think, still is going to be like, let's think about the movie Titanic. Rose, what was that? What was Leonardo DiCaprio? Jack, Rose and Jack. The Titanic is sinking. That's all of American higher education. but Rose and Jack are the last people on the back of the Titanic as it's coming down. That is MIT. Rose and Jack are MIT. Okay. So goes MIT. The whole thing goes, right? So yeah, I would go into debt for MIT. I don't know how much debt. Hopefully you have a need, your family need. Maybe you'll get need-based financial aid. You'll see that soon enough, right? But yeah, I think they're pretty generous with aid at MIT if your family deserves it. But if you're a full pay, I would pay. If you obviously can afford it. If they say you don't need to, if you have to pay, pay. Yeah, that shows you're smart. You're very, just because you're rich doesn't mean you're smart. And if your family can pay and you're smart and you can get into MIT, do it. That's like a twofer. That's great. Good for you. Did you get into MIT? I hope you got into MIT. Oh, so the next question is MIT full ride versus Georgia Tech. Wait. I'm sorry. MIT versus a full ride at Georgia Tech. Oh my. Oh God. Well, but again, SKG8IN. The question is, how wealthy are you? If you can be a full pay student, if you are a full pay student and your family can afford it, what easily, I'd still pick MIT. If, however, like your family is not making $1 million a year, then Georgia Tech is a very good school too. It's a very compelling school, but it's not MIT. It's not MIT. Nope, it's not. It's not. So it all really depends on your family income. Middle class. And we'll have to get into debt. Well, go into debt for MIT. Well, again, that's a hard question. I mean, very few people will publicize that they turned down MIT. So I'm happy you're not identified literally here. Like, I mean, that's really hard. That's a hard question. Georgia Tech is still a public school. Like, it's not like, so yes, it's gotten much harder to get into, but it's still like Georgia Tech. It's not MIT. So I would visit both. Go on the ground, do your due diligence, because that's a hard one. That's very hard. But it's all about you. I mean, it's all about fit. Like I said, you have agency in this too. Just like when the colleges reject you because they're not that into you or they defer you, you cannot be into MIT. Just because it's MIT doesn't mean it's better than Georgia Tech for you. Maybe you vibe better with Georgia Tech, and that's great. I'm not going to question that. But it is hard to think that you would turn down MIT because MIT is like the grand dame of American higher education. Like, it's MIT. Yes, they've had their fraud cases too, including their former dean of admission, who I think became a college admissions consultant like me. But she completely lied about her resume, if you've been following things for the last 20 years. But she was actually a lovely person. And she got into a lie, and people lie, and it's, they should pay. But I think it's a shame she paid as much as she did, because most people now occupying admissions offices have probably also lied on their resume. They just were more skilled at lying. So I am not an end justifies the mean type of person. So I do think you should pay for lying. But MIT still has a really great reputation. So I would be hard pressed to say no to MIT if you got into MIT. All right. I'm so flummoxed by this question, because that's a really full ride at Georgia Tech versus full pay at MIT. I mean, MIT is very prestigious. I mean, I was talking a few minutes ago about status. It's all about status. So if you think about it like that, like, MIT does grant you a good deal of status, but again, show me the money. What are the job placement rates? If you're going to actually have to work, if you're not going to be independently wealthy or marry for money or something, like, you're going to have to actually work for it. You should ask Georgia Tech and MIT to show you where people are working and what their pay is 1 year out, 5 years out, 10 years out, and compare and contrast, just like I did earlier with Colorado and Colorado School of Mines. If time allows, could you do a few comments overall on how you rank the Ivy League schools? Oh, maybe I'll do that. I don't know. That's hard because it's such a personal choice. Can you share your top controversial or unconventional ideas for colleges? Well, I think I've just said a lot of controversial things over the last hour and 44 minutes. You may want to rewatch this, because again, I'm very unusual in the world of college admissions. I'm the only one who, you will not find someone else in the world of college admissions who speaks like I do. You just won't. There's not anyone else like me, because even if they think like me, they will not dare speak like me, because you cannot get hired in admissions, either on the college side or the high school side, if you speak like me. You cannot, because it just all the thoughts I've just shared with you for the last hour and 44 minutes are verboten in the world. You cannot speak these truths in the world of college admissions. But other controversial or unconventional opinions, as it relates to college, well, I don't know. I mean, I think you watch my videos. I think I share a lot of them in my videos. When asking to attend, yeah, I already did that one. Ranking the Ivy League schools. Well, it depends on where you're applying from. I do believe if you're an international student, the best bet is Dartmouth. If you're an American student, the best bet may be Dartmouth too. I mean, Dartmouth is the least popular Ivy because it's so small and so isolated. And it is a college, whereas the others are research. Well, I mean, obviously they're a research university too, but they even call it Dartmouth College and everything. But it's isolated. I mean, few people can handle that. Few people want that. Many people wanting to go to the Ivies want to go to the Ivies to broaden their horizons and develop a big network of status, whereas Dartmouth feels somewhat claustrophobic for many students. So that's why, and also for the international families, all these flights to these small little airports and to go on a car into the woods of New Hampshire. I mean, it's a lot to ask. When I was working with more Brazilian families, they would laugh at the idea of Dartmouth or Notre Dame. Even they would laugh. They would say, "Craig, I'm not sending my child to the Amazon." They equate it to like sending their child to like the Amazon rainforest because that's like what they're familiar with, like as a backwards, rural area. And I had to explain, like, no, don't worry. There's stores there. It's not just illegal logging, like in your Amazon. There are actually there's civilization in New Hampshire. There's civilization in Indiana. So you can send your daughter or son to Notre Dame or Dartmouth. But that's hard to get your head around if you're applying from Dubai or applying from Sao Paulo or whatever. So I would say that in terms of demand, there's less demand for Dartmouth. But in terms of the quality of the school, I mean, that's a very, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I would say that they've all lost currency with me in the last 20 years. Let's put it that way. I still am partial to Penn. I really do like Penn. I like the combination of pre-professional and liberal arts focus at Penn that also exists, of course, to some extent at Brown and at Cornell, whereas almost all the other Ivies are basically, and with the exception of Princeton a little bit, then, they're more liberal arts schools. I mean, they're just liberal arts schools. So I always laugh when a kid wants to major in business and he wants to apply to all the Ivies. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing? You can apply, of course, to Penn and Cornell, but if you really are serious about business, why do you want to apply to Yale? Why do you want to apply to Dartmouth undergrad? I mean, you can cobble together an interesting economics major out of it, or some sort of, they have the Brown has that one major, that's sort of businessy and such, but really, no, it's all about fit. It's all about fit. So ranking the best Ivy League schools is all about what's the best for you. But I would say, even Columbia, which I'm not a huge fan of in a lot of ways, is the right fit for certain kids. And I've known very happy, successful people to go to Columbia. It's definitely not the right fit for, a kid you should not be applying to Dartmouth and Columbia. If you're applying to Dartmouth and Columbia, something's wrong with you. You're just doing, it's a pure status play. If you're applying to Dartmouth and Columbia, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. So the Ivy League is a sports league, but it just so happens to cobble together these 8 schools that are very prestigious and have an air of academic selectivity. But beyond sort of the curtain, it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz. When you pull back the curtain, they're very different, and they're not exactly what they portray themselves to be, or portray themselves to be, but they're betraying the public in many ways. So, Brown, that was very bad what happened at Brown a couple of weeks ago. That was really bad. I don't recommend Brown. They got to get their security act together. For anyone to just be able to walk into those buildings without a security clearance, this is an Ivy League institution. That's correct. Even back years ago, before there was a TSA at Penn, when I went to Penn, they had better security than it looks like Brown has in 2025 or 2026. That's inexcusable. And Providence is not exactly the safest place. Yes, it's not as bad as Philadelphia, don't get me wrong, or Manhattan, but there's petty crime throughout Providence. So I don't know. All these Ivy League schools, I'm not as impressed with today as I used to be, to say the least. But if I could, I mean, Cornell, again, I know I've had a controversial opinion in the past where I've even said that I don't even look at Cornell like an Ivy League school. I look at it like a public university. And I know that's offended so many people. And I'm sorry, but I keep saying it. It's sort of, I call it a quasi Ivy League. Yes, it's Ivy League. Yes, Cornell's an Ivy League school. But some of its schools are, public, in the sense that they have the public mission in New York there and such. So again, I should do a whole video. Is Cornell really an Ivy League school after all? So no, but Cornell has some great majors. And but if you take Cornell out of the mix, which is also highly depressing. I mean, look, Ithaca is a very depressing place. Ithaca College, I constantly want to recommend Ithaca College, but I constantly have families go and they keep telling me it's so depressing. And it's not just depressing at Ithaca. I mean, it's obviously like falling apart compared to Cornell. And they have but they have some really good majors at Ithaca College, which is a shame. I like Ithaca College. I want to like it. I love the president of Ithaca College is a very impressive woman from Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore, and she's very impressive woman, but she's got a lot to handle there in Ithaca College. They're running upstream. I think that they should hook up with maybe they can merge or something with Cornell because they have some fun majors. My point is Ithaca College has some good majors. I like some of their majors. This is how I really think. This is constantly how I think. I'm constantly thinking about 5 different things at once that relate to things that relate to the questions. But I'm not answering your question because how can I would still put Penn as my number 1 ranked Ivy League school. Yes, and that's why I'm so hard on Penn and Whitney Soule, because I want more from Penn. Penn should be better. I want Penn to be the best. I believe it has the most potential of all the Ivy League schools. But I cry at what's happened to Penn's admissions office. I cry at what's happened there. Prediction of UC schools bringing about SAT school. Oh my God. From your mouth to God ears. What I love for UCLA and UC San Diego to require the SAT, an ACT again, or ACT again. Oh my God. It would be that I would then feel like maybe we've established some normalcy again and we've made America great again. I don't think we'll have made America great again until the UCs go back to requiring the SAT or ACT. I don't think they're going back. It's just too political. That whole thing is political. It's all political. It's sad. Education should not be political. It should be education. But as you may have read recently, many kids at UC San Diego can't even do remedial math. It's such an interesting thing at UC San Diego because, if you are an in-state Pell student, you have such an advantage to get into their engineering program or their STEM programs over their high demand majors at UC San Diego. But you could be going to college with someone who can't even, you yourself may have gotten a 900 on the SAT. Oh my God, it's horrifying to think about. And yet you got straight A's at your inner city San Francisco or Stockton or South Central LA high school. You got straight A's. You got into UC. You got into all the UCs. It's like those news articles for the kids who get into all the Ivies. It's always you can predict who will get into all the Ivies. You can also predict who will get into all the UCs. And it's not the kid who has a 1600 on the SAT because they are they're not, I can't use that because I'll be just politically incorrect. They're test free. They're not test blind. They're test free. And they should go back to at least being test optional. Meet me halfway, UCs. At least be test optional. But they're not even test optional. It's painful. So I could make much more money on my YouTube videos if I just talked about the UCs more, but I won't do it because I won't be seduced by that. YouTube paying me. I don't want the money. I don't want YouTube's money for that because I really don't believe in the UCs anymore because what they've done by being test free. I just don't believe it. I don't believe in it. And I particularly don't believe in UC San Diego because I don't believe in discriminating against people based off of their ethnicity or their family's college going history. And I do not believe in discrimination based off of things that the student cannot control. And UC San Diego has gotten into the business of being a discriminatory institution in particular, more blatantly than even UC Berkeley or UCLA. And I think that's very, very sad. Read up on it. I did previous videos on this. You can watch my previous videos. I would be thrilled if every student at UC San Diego had a perfect SAT scores, regardless of what if they were all Black, if they were all Hispanic, if they were all white, if they were all Asian. I don't care. I believe that they should be the best minds. Just like, you want the best football players, the best baseball players on your baseball team, your football team, your basketball team. You want the best minds at your university. And the UCs are the UCs, it's a completely contorted social engineering project, all of them, when you don't even look at SAT or ACT scores. It's a travesty, also known as a shanda. It is a shanda, as my dad used to say. It is a shanda. It is a travesty. Okay? What's happened to the UCs? All right. And Notre Dame is not bad. You're right. I like Notre Dame. I do. As an alum, where do you think Penn stands nowadays amongst the Ivy League and top-ranked schools in terms of culture selectivity? Well, it's not the same Penn I went to. I mean, it's like they're making a play to be like NYU. They're making a play to be like Columbia or Harvard. I mean, the whole body of the students is different culturally. And that's true of just this generation. I mean, the teens today are very different than the teens when I went there, but also demographically. I mean, they've worked hard to demographically not accept the kids they were accepting when I was getting in. Okay, so it's not your mommy's or daddy's Penn. Let's put it that way. Unless you are very, very, very wealthy and connected, they work hard to not accept people they were accepting in the 1990s and the early 2000s today at Penn. I'm trying to think through maybe doing a video on what percentage of Penn undergrads are white, male, born and bred Americans who are not a sexual minority. What would you predict that number to be? I would say it's probably like less than, or not an athlete, and not a recruitable athlete at Penn. So if you do the math, who would that be? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, do any of those people exist at Penn? And that's just like a one litmus test, of course. I mean, you could do it any number of ways, but I would even add the Jewish versus Christian. Like, what percentage of white men at Penn undergrad are not Jewish or gay? It's hard to believe there are any, and also not a recruitable athlete. I mean, I think this is something you should think about when you go and visit these college campuses. For years we've been told by society, you need to see people in the faculty or on the staff or in the student population that look like you for you to feel comfortable there. I think you should see people you can relate to. I don't think it should be based off of looks per se, or literally skin color or sexual orientation or religion. I think it should be based off of shared values. You could be Black and have completely different values from another Black person. You could be gay and have completely different values from a different gay person. So you should go deeper than just those labels. You should say, okay, what do you like to do for fun? What's your personality? Do you go to bars? Do you go to restaurants? Do you like to hang out in your room and read books? Those are things that are more important to me than your race or your sexual orientation. But there is something to be said for the fact, like, if you go to Penn's campus and you see a white male, what are the chances that he is a white Christian male who is straight, who's American? I think I would say the chances are probably less than 5%, maybe less than 2%. Okay, so a white Christian American male who was not a recruitable athlete on Penn's campus. So you can imagine, like a lot of the warden guys are, if they're white Christian males, are also athletes. Um, so these are just interesting. I like to play these scenarios out of my head. I work with all different types of people, so I like to think about these things. Like, will you feel comfortable to place, not just based off of the demographics, which you deserve to at least see one person that looks like you, but also based off of the values or the goals you have going to that school. But Penn is not my Penn, the Penn that exists today. It doesn't mean it's a bad place. It's just not, I don't recognize it as the Penn I went to. I mean, yes, they have Claudia Cohen Hall or whatever. That didn't even exist. That was Logan Hall when I was there. But Claudia Cohen was a lovely woman, but she and her ex-husband Perlman donated the money for her, that hall, to be named after her. But she occasionally would guest host on Regis and Kathy Lee. Or I think she was like the gossip columnist, right? Like Claudia, it's sad. She died of cancer. It was very sad. So yes, there's some more names that might look like names that you would see on campus when I was there. But that's it. That's just the money coming in. That's not the actual student population. So that's just interesting. Anyway, do you think ED2 at Emory is worth it? I mean, Tufts and Emory are interesting. I mean, Tufts and Emory. I've been doing this for 2 hours now, so I could talk like this all the time, and I don't know if anyone has found value in this. I hope you have. It's just been a 2-hour rant. Let's be honest. But Tufts and Emory are very interesting in that so many kids who go to Tufts and Emory are so bitter. They're so bitter that they didn't get into Penn and Princeton. They're just so bitter. Or in the case of Tufts, like Harvard or one of these others, or Brown even. So it's hard. I always appreciate when I work with someone who really wants to go to Tufts and Emory. Like because like those schools don't have enough people who really want to go to them, because so many kids go to those schools with a chip on their shoulder because they really wanted to go somewhere else. And I don't see as many people transfer out of Tufts as I do see transfer out of Emory. That bitterness never goes. So a lot of kids will like try to still transfer out of Emory to get to Penn or to get to somewhere else. But if you really like Emory, good, more power to you. I mean, Emory, there's some positive things about Emory. I like elements of Emory. Oxford is a nice way to get into Emory if you can't get into Emory straight off the bat. But Emory and Tufts, I mean, look, it's no secret. Like the leadership in the admissions office at Tufts and Emory, Tufts, it's just interesting. I shouldn't talk. I shouldn't do it. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. But I think that, look, everyone has to protect their job. I respect the fact that people need to feed themselves. So they got to do what they got to do. But Emory is a lovely school for the right, all of these schools are lovely schools for the right types of people, right? So, but I do find that the overall student population of Tufts and Emory does have a higher percentage of people who are a little embittered that they're going there. And therefore, it never really invested in going all in as an Emory. So like they don't like bleed blue and yellow. Is that their colors at Emory? I think it is. Or they don't bleed blue at Tufts. Like at Penn, they bleed red, white, and blue. Or they at Miami, arguably they bleed orange and green or whatever. And definitely Princeton, they bleed black and orange. Not so much at Tufts and not so much at Emory. No. And I mean, even that's true, of course, at NYU. I mean, the type of kid who goes to NYU is like very much like a free agent, like a city kid. No loyalty at all. They could drop you like they could be in Switzerland one weekend. They could be in Dubai the next. They're in NYU. Now they're Abu Dhabi. They're in Shanghai. There's no loyal NYU. That's just the New York mentality. Now the people attracted to New York right now are very transactional. So it's interesting. But at New York University, and there's a small, this is all stereotypes. There's a small cadre of people who really do love NYU. They're purple. They bleed purple or whatever. But no, I'm on a tangent again. Is Emory compared to what? Is ED2 worth it at Emory compared to what? Compared to what? What is it compared to? Jane, Lou, what is it compared to? What am I comparing it to? As an alum of Penn State, as an alum of Penn State, where would you rank it? It's not Penn State. It's Penn. I did a whole video about this. Penn. It's not UPenn. Don't call it UPenn. It's Penn, but it's different from Penn State. Penn State is a public research university in University Park, Pennsylvania. Again, if you were listening a few minutes ago, Penn, the Ivy League institution, University of Pennsylvania, I would rank as one of the top Ivies. I would, because I think there's a lot of amazing majors there, very dynamic, whereas at least they have a school of nursing, a school of engineering, a school of business, a school of arts and sciences. And of course, Cornell has similar numbers of schools and more even. Where you're going to Dartmouth, it's just all undergrad. You're just all undergrad. That's it. It's just all liberal arts, basically. And that's basically the case at the, obviously engineering a little bit at Columbia and at Princeton and such and Brown. But really, there's not as much dynamism in the undergraduate choices to study. And you get different types of kids when you have that diversity of major, which is nice. I like that. I actually do believe in diversity. I believe in diversity. I'm a big believer in the D in DEI. I like diversity. I was in the Student Diversity Leadership Conference. I went in the they canceled this. They got rid of the People of Color Conference. I went to an independent school and I was your white kid who actually signed up to go to the People of Color Conference and Student Diversity Leadership Conference back in the 1990s, because I really do believe in diversity. And I wanted to learn about diversity, and I believe in it today. I think that's what's great about Cornell and Penn, is that there's such a diversity of students with different interests in one setting, whereas you don't get as much diversity at any of the Ivies anymore. Because look, even if you're majoring in Portuguese, everyone just wants to be a consultant at McKinsey. Everyone just wants to work at a hedge fund or Blackstone or whatever. It used to be Bear Stearns. That's gone. It's so sickening. Or they want to work in computer science. Maybe the computer science thing will change because now AI or automated, AI or remote work is destroying these computer science coding fields. So maybe that will change. Maybe history will become a popular major at Penn, like it was when I was there. Penn's undergraduate majors, history was the most popular major when I majored in history. Now history at Penn is like, I'm assuming it's like Kansas in a drought. It's like, like you see the hay like blowing in the wind, like Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl. That's probably like the history department now at Penn. It's so sad what's happened, both because of the ROI factor being so important to the current families who are applying to Ivy League schools. Many parents want return on investment, and the economy is not what it used to be before the financial crash of 2008. So I understand that. But so everyone's geared towards STEM or business, whether it be at Penn or at Brown. It really doesn't matter, or at Dartmouth. Everyone wants to do STEM or business, it seems like. But with AI, that's going to change things. So maybe, but the other reason Penn destroyed history is because who they hired in the history department. They hired people studying parts of geographic history or parts of history that people aren't as interested in studying. And they also hired people who taught history from a very current events political perspective. Let's just put it that way. And weren't like the old school history professors at Penn, like Professor Childers or Professor Steinberg, or the guy who, God, I forgot his name, but the guy who consulted on the Civil War series with Ken Burns, who I took his Civil War class. He used to be the president during that whole water buffalo scandal at Penn. That was well before I arrived, but he was my professor in the Civil. It was an amazing class, the Civil War class. I loved his class. He has since passed away. I forgot his name. What was his name? But he was like a president for a short time, I think, like during a tumult years at Penn before I got there. But the history department was populated by people who did not want to mix current politics with history. They knew there should be a separation. Whereas now the history department at Penn, it's like the whole reason they were hired was because of modern politics. And they're teaching courses about traditionally underrepresented parts of history, which is fine as long as you're still teaching the other stuff. But they're not even teaching the other stuff as much anymore, which is really sad to me. at Penn. So that's what the stuff that made the history department strong at Penn is no longer being taught at Penn at all. Probably it's disgusting. I'm all about. I would have loved to study more types of history, but I don't think you should sacrifice the other parts of history to teach it. Anyway, so maybe with the advent of AI, maybe the computer science will become less, the engineering school will become less popular. I don't know. I don't know. Anything to say about individuals who are on H4, i.e., living in the U.S. but considered international? No, I don't know. I have nothing to say about that. Just be honest on your application. And in most cases, you're considered a domestic applicant. But if you, you'll have to read the fine print of in terms of how it affects aid and your need for need-based aid, because that's every school is going to treat that a little differently. Did you expect the significant increase in Asian students? Yes, I did. Admitted in the last cycle at schools like Harvard and Johns Hopkins. Yes, I did expect it. If they were actually not putting their fingers on the scale in other ways. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't believe that SAT and ACT scores should be everything. They shouldn't be. Like, there are some amazingly smart minds who can get like a 1450 on the SAT who are probably a more dynamic student than a 1600 who just studies all the time and just wants to become, an orthopedic surgeon in Omaha. So no offense to orthopedic surgeons in Omaha, but I understand why an Ivy League school may want to accept someone for reasons other than his SAT or ACT scores. But when all the schools went at test optional and then they went back to being test required, Princeton is the last one to do. Well, Columbia is holding out. That's the last one. So Princeton will go back to being test required next year. All of them, as long as they weren't playing games in the background, of course, we're all going to become more Asian and white. But what I think what you saw is like none of them became more white. I don't think. Maybe a couple did, but they all became slightly or maybe a little more. Actually, I shouldn't even say they all became more Asian. I don't even think Harvard became more Asian. I don't know. I think Harvard just became more like non-described. I think that people just didn't describe, or they said multiple ethnicities. I don't know. But no, Johns Hopkins is not Harvard. So I'm not surprised that Johns Hopkins, of all schools, with such a demand for medicine, pre-med, would see a huge increase in Asian. No, I'm not surprised at all. Nope, not at all. That might not be a good thing. I'm not anti-Asian. I think Asians are great. All people are great. But I, again, really do believe in diversity. And you don't want to have an entire population of a school be all white or all black. I understand that, like, in principle. All of these schools are really good schools. They should be able to attract smart people of all races, all geographies, all religions, all countries. But I think Johns Hopkins is in a particularly tight position because the limited number of majors there and the demand for certain majors from certain demographic groups all coalesce to mean that huge numbers of Asians have always been applying to Johns Hopkins. And with the SAT being acquired again, it was a fait accompli that they were going to have a huge increase in Asians. Now, they're going to do things in the background to change that. Should they, or is that legal? They're going to try to start considering other things. And one of the things they did, of course, is to now make it free for people under 250,000. That's the whole Bloomberg money thing. I did a whole video on that. But the key is, how are you going to get different types of kids applying to Hopkins and qualify to get in? That's the thing that Hopkins is struggling with. They want to have more diversity, and they would be able to have greater diversity if they had a greater diversity of applicants who were qualified to go there. But they don't. And that's a problem. Johns Hopkins has to figure out a way to make that happen if they want to have a different demographic composition, if they even care to do that. How do regional limits work for Ivies like Penn? Because the number one in my school was accepted to Wharton, and I was deferred number two. I heard they have caps based off region, but why wasn't I just rejected then? Well, you're overthinking it. I mean, look, it's not true. Penn will occasionally accept multiple kids from the same high school. They will. Even public schools, they'll do it. I think it happens more, at private schools, but Penn will. So geography plays a role. I mean, geography really plays a role more than high school. I mean, The UCs use the high school thing much more than I think the Ivies do. The UCs, their whole gimmick is zip code, census tract, high school, and affirmative action based off high school, not based off of rate, not based off the individual applicant. They base it off of the demographics and the scores and whatever the income of the high school. That's the UC's gimmick. But the Ivies gimmick is, they just want but it's much more of an art at the Ivies and not a science. Whereas I think the UCs have it down more to a science. But no, I don't. You were deferred not because they wouldn't take two. You were deferred because in the overall pool of who they were accepting early, you just didn't make the cut. No offense, but they weren't impressed enough by you. I'm sorry to say. And they didn't take the guy who was number one because he was number one. They took him because his overall application was more impressive than yours, not just the rank. The rank doesn't play as much of a role as you think, because again, I'm from the private. I came up in the independent school world. I worked in the independent school world. I went to the independent school world. Almost every independent school doesn't rank kids. So the colleges really, rank doesn't play as big of a role as public school kids think it plays in terms of getting into colleges. What matters is just the overall package and the differentiation that you can present in your application. That's really what matters to these Ivy League colleges. Related question: my son got deferred by UCH. What is UCH? I'm trying to think. What University of what? EA. What is UCH? ED2. I'm sorry. What is UCH? Oh, University of Chicago. Maybe is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean? University of Chicago? ED2 at University of Chicago or ED2 at Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, or Emory. Oh, God, that's a hard one. I would say, I don't know enough about your student, but what I would say is, oh my God, Chicago. It's upsetting to me that the student hasn't narrowed it down enough. Like, they aren't interchangeable cogs in a wheel. Chicago culturally is very different than Vanderbilt, very different than Emory, very different than Hopkins. Chicago regular is going to be very, very, very selective. Worse than even EA was. ED2 is your last bet. I would look at the Chicago train as leaving the station after ED2. Of the ones you just mentioned, I think Emory is going to be the easiest regular. So if it's just a play about getting into one of these impressive schools, I guess Emory. Though again, it all depends on like your region and your demographics to some extent, even though they're not really supposed to consider that, but they do consider it, especially as it relates to sex and life story and all these other things. If you can shoehorn it into the supplemental essay, which you can do more easily with, I think, Hopkins and Vanderbilt than Emory. And Chicago, obviously, you've already done the application, so that's already done. So I don't know. I would say that if his first choice is Chicago, I would do ED2 at Chicago. But they're all good schools, like I said, for the right kid. I think Hopkins, as I did a whole video about it a couple weeks ago, Hopkins could benefit from your child if he or she is not looking at being pre-med. But if he or she is going into a science or being pre-med, that's just more of what they're already getting. So like if you got to present yourself as being a differentiated candidate, and you have to authentically be a differentiated candidate to get in regular. So you have to think about where is your child going to be the most differentiatable during regular decision. Clearly, you didn't sell Chicago on yourself or your child's self early action. ED2 is your last chance to really demonstrate interest to Chicago because you can't write a new essay. Okay. I can't believe I'm still going, but this is fun. I'm in a corner. I'm in a corner here on a sofa or a nice chair. I meant it. Is it worth it to apply ED2 to Emory as compared to regular? Well, yeah. Yes, the ED2 acceptance rate is going to be higher at Emory than compared to regular. Yes. Yes, the acceptance rate is going to be higher early decision 2 at Emory than it is regular at Emory. Yes. Is there a sleeper school you think more should apply to, or you would recommend your own son to apply to? That deadline has not passed yet. Computer science interest and okay, I did a whole video and article about this a couple years ago, but I don't know what the deadlines are. The deadlines might have passed because I can't keep it straight if it's January 1st or January 5th or whatever. But I like for STEM and business, Santa Clara University in Santa Clara University in California. I do like Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken. I do like Rose Holman in Indiana. I do like Colorado School of Mines for engineering. Those are some sleeper schools that I think are. I think I did a whole video about these underranked or these underappreciated schools, these underrated schools. I really like all those schools that I just mentioned. A lot. I don't know if their deadlines are passed or not, but look that up. Those are all great schools. I got deferred by Duke. I'm sorry. What are my chances? They're low. They're low. But it's nice that you got deferred because they do reject the majority of ED applicants. So the fact that you were deferred is nice, but they may be actually deferring more this year because they had to go into the wait list last year. So it might not be that good of a sign at all. But it's a very bad look. It's a bad sign that you were not accepted early decision. If you were not accepted early decision, that is not good. Play the field. Assume it's over. If you get in, it's like congratulations, but you're probably not going to get into Duke regular. What business school, in your opinion, is best for entrepreneurs? Babson. Babson is. Yeah, Babson. But again, I think entrepreneurship, watch the first hour of this video where I was basically saying, like, entrepreneurship as a college major is like a joke because if they're good at entrepreneurship, they shouldn't be teaching a class. They should be building a startup in Miami or something. Like, would you trust a professor who's teaching entrepreneurship, even at Wharton, if he himself is not a successful entrepreneur? Or she herself is not a successful entrepreneur. I don't think I would, because you see, it doesn't make sense. But I think Babson's pretty good, and Wharton's not bad, and NYU isn't. I mean, there are a lot of schools that have good entrepreneurship rankings, but I would say Babson. Okay. Which one is worse? Now, I may end the call soon because I don't like these. Which one is worse type question. Dartmouth defer or Cornell defer based on what? I don't even know what that means. Which one is worse? Dartmouth defer or Cornell defer? Oh, I see. Like based off chances. They're both really bad news. They're both bad news. I mean, like if you get deferred, they took a swipe at you. They swiped the wrong way, right? I'm not on those apps, but is it swiping left or swiping right? They swiped in the opposite direction from you. So maybe they'll swipe in your direction the right way regular, but they've already said no once. So it's not great. Watch my letter of continued interest as a video from like early 2024 when I was 40 pounds heavier. I've lost some weight. Have you noticed? I don't know. I've lost a little weight. So you may not recognize me. I was a little bit more rotund or a little bit more cherubic 2 years ago, but watch that video because there's some really good advice on how to make a good letter of continued interest. What do you think about Carnegie Mellon? I talked about that in the first hour or two. In terms of prestige academics, well, I mean, it's prestigious. It's prestigious. I know a guy from my year who has very successful from Carnegie Mellon. He's worked for years, like a very, like company guy. And Carnegie Mellon's a good school. But like I said, socially, I leave it wanting. Let's put it that way. I'm not a huge social fan of Carnegie Mellon. It's a very prestigious school, though. People who know Carnegie Mellon. Now, what they have is it Qatar or Qatar? I don't know what they're saying. I think in the early, just like Kiev is now Kyiv. In the wars of George W. Bush, I think we were told to call Qatar gutter or Qatar. So what are we calling Qatar now? Are we calling it Qatar? Or are we calling it like guitar? Or are we calling it gutter? I don't know what we're supposed to call Qatar. But doesn't Carnegie Mellon have a Qatar campus? Aren't they like fully owned and operated now by Qatar? I don't know. Or is that Georgetown? Or all of them? Northwestern? They're all sort of, outposts of Middle Eastern oil in some ways, or gas in some way. They're all, and maybe that's why Trump invaded. Is that why is Venezuela now a protectorate of the United States? It's for the oil, of course. Everything is about money and oil. So is that going to bother Abu Dhabi, NYU Abu Dhabi? I don't know. I mean, it's probably going to bother all of them. Maybe they're going to get a little angry. I don't know, but that's a political thing. It's so sad what's happened. When I started doing this, I had a lot of Venezuela clients, but those Venezuelan clients have become Miami-Dade clients over the last 10 years, 15 years. Everyone who could get out got out. So I don't know what's happening now, unless they were unless they were a bigwig in the Maduro regime. Many of the schools have entrepreneurs in residence. Yes, that's nice when they have that. Yes, that's good. I agree with that. I like, but if you have a full-time entrepreneurship professor, I would run in the opposite direction. Like what are you going to learn from? I mean, maybe they're a good teacher, but they're clearly not. Something's gone awry there, right? How should a community college student veteran approach a Y transfer? Now, I will say I used to help transfer applicants much more. I don't do it anymore because I like to specialize in first year admission. I found myself a few years ago like walking away in anger at the transfer Common App because it's such a pain in the butt compared to the first year Common App. But the answer to your question is be honest. Tell the truth. What did you learn from your time as your time? You're someone who's been in the U.S. Armed Forces in one way, shape, or form, and you're now a veteran. And you've now started in community college. I think that's a demographic they really want. They want people to come from community college and who've had really interesting life experiences. So I would try to harness those life experiences to augment your essay in such a manner where you're communicating why you will bring value added to that particular, to college overall, or to that major and to your study of that major, whatever it is you're saying in that application. I think that that's a great idea. You should do that. Lean heavily on your very unique life experience. I think that would be awesome. You're writing, Ahmed or whatever, it looks like Ahmed. Writing is a challenge. I was talking about that earlier. Many people can't write anymore, but be confident. Write about how your experience as a veteran, your experience as a community college student has empowered you to be that much of a risk taker or that much more of a impact player. And you will hit the ground running because of your life experiences once you get to college in a manner that other transfer applicants will not be able to do because you've had to really pull yourself up by the bootstraps in different real life challenging scenarios. Are the big Southern state universities getting a lot more attention these days? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are some of the few universities left that are fun to go to and not miserable ideological prisons. Helpful. On the sleeper school topic, my son got into Santa Clara already as a safety. We like it too. Well, congratulations. I'm happy to hear that. It is a nice option for many students who are aiming very high, but who also want a good, strong option that's not too low. And Santa Clara, California is interesting because there are not a lot of good private schools in California. They're just not. I mean, God, it's so sad what's happened to Whittier. I mean, I used to even recommend Whittier 20 years ago, but I can't recommend Whittier anymore. I mean, yeah, maybe Chapman's okay. Obviously, USC is great and Stanford is great. But beyond Stanford, Santa Clara, USC, Chapman, and maybe Loyola Marymount and Pepperdine and San Diego, University of San Diego. What really is there private schools wise? There's not many private schools. Oh, okay, Caltech, yes, of course, Caltech. But for the size of California, they should be having many more private schools that are good there. But they don't have that many good private schools, both because of the newness of the state, but also the UCs were really good for many, many decades. They were good. The UCs were great. Many of them were amazing. But because of demand from Asia, because of removal of the test requirement and going test free, they destroy that real fast. And so California could benefit from more Stanfords and Caltechs and USCs and Pepperdines and Santa Claras. Let me tell you something. In one of your shorts, you said originality matters. Yes, that was years ago. I think I did that in Brazil when I was in Rio. Matters more than clubs and titles. Can you clarify what originality means? So I remember that video like it was yesterday, even though that was 10 years ago this year. That was made 10 years ago this year. That video. I was so young. It's so sad. Time goes so fast. But what I will say is, I think I said originality trumps leadership. I think that's what the video was about. And what I meant by that is Every high school has a yearbook editor. Every high school has a president of the senior class or whatever. But not every high school has an original character who started his own club or started his own fundraiser or who started her own business or who created an initiative in her community. So that's what I mean. I mean, you've got to be original. And that starts with not going on TikTok and trying to copy people. Being original means going off of TikTok and going off of Instagram and going off these things, looking at yourself in the mirror in your unfettered glory before you go to bed at night and say, how am I really different than my best friends or my mom or my dad or my brother or my sister? How am I most different from the people closest to me and most like me? And what do I like to think about? What do I like to do? What do I dream about? What do I imagine about? And once you've done that, start doing things related to that which differentiates you and which excites you in your daily life. Make your extracurricular life as original as your unique interests and as differentiated from your peer group or your family group as possible. That's going to get you much further than simply being a joining monkey in 9th grade and being a president of 7 clubs by 10th grade. Okay, it's going to be much more bang for your buck to do 1 or 2 things originally or eccentrically even than doing 7 things like every kid at every high school could do them, as long as you're a high achieving kid at that high school. Opinions on endless gap year. Yes, my opinion on an endless gap year would be do it. Yes, then you never have to apply to college ever. Yes, that would be great. An endless gap year means basically just never go to college. And that's actually the right path for the majority of people. Unfortunately, what's happened over the last 30 years is Americans were told everyone should go to a 4-year college. And many people who were not suited for a 4-year college went to a 4-year college and they hated it. They dropped out or they weren't suited for it. So the colleges changed to cater to these people who don't want to go to a good college or don't want to go to college. And they have watered down the college experience as a result. San Jose State, I don't think I've ever had a kid apply to San Jose State, mainly because most of my clients are East Coast or international. And that's not as popular on the East Coast or internationally. San Jose State, no. Now, Claremont McKenna is interesting. I really like Claremont. I even have a Claremont McKenna shirt in my closet, which is about 20 feet in that direction. I have 2 actually, because a lovely man from Claremont McKenna visited a school I was working at years ago, and he gave me 2. I love Claremont McKenna. And they're good in political science. PPE, I think, is really good there and at Pomona. And I recommend the Claremont schools often, especially to my East Coast school kids who are wanting to get away. I like Claremont McKenna a lot. So yes, that is that. Yes. So thank you for bringing that up. So yes, the 5 college consortium there does add a nice little extra private school in California. So you're right. I failed to mention those. You are right. But no offense to San Jose State. I was not thinking about San Jose State when I was thinking about other schools beyond the UCs. I'm sorry. No offense to San Jose State, but that's just not what I'm talking about. What are your Texas is another state similar. It's interesting. Texas and California are big rivals in many ways, state-wise. I think they hate each other because they're so similar. Let's be honest. They're so similar. And frankly, in 15 years, they're going to be the same politically too. They're going to both be very left-wing states eventually. But they are also similar in terms of very low numbers of strong private colleges. You're absolutely right. Rice obviously comes to mind as a strong private college in Texas. But what else is there? SMU, SMU, St. Edwards, there's Southwestern, there's Trinity. But no, for the size of Texas, that's pathetic. They don't have many good private schools in Texas. That's sad. I think that's very sad. I don't recommend Texas Christian. I do like Baylor for the right kid. And I do like Texas A&M, but that's public, of course. And I also like UT Austin. But again, for the size of Texas, there's like nothing in the way of private college. And I mean, that's almost like a good thing because I think the education industry is bloated in any way in this country. But not many. Again, there's not even that many good colleges in Florida, private schools. There's Miami. Florida's a mess. Florida's a mess in terms of private colleges too. The majority of the good private colleges are on the East Coast, just because of history and the longer history. But there's some good ones in the Upper Midwest too. But the further west you go, there's like not much in the way of good private colleges. Is living in the South considered a big deal in college admissions? Not as much as it used to, especially as Florida has grown since the pandemic. Florida really doesn't count as the South. It's sort of like, especially south of West Palm. I mean, Florida is basically New York. It's just hot. It's just hot all the time. It's just like a hot New York. It's a hot mess New York. That's what, if you go to Lake Worth in Palm Beach County, everything Lake Worth and south, you might as well be on Long Island or in one of the 5 boroughs of New York. So that no longer counts as the South, if it ever did. I mean, it was sort of like Latin America anyway in Miami-Dade, but there was a time when Broward and Palm Beach County were sort of, still old Florida. That's not the case anymore. Since basically all of Manhattan and Long Island decamped to those areas. So the South, though, like as in Mississippi, as in Alabama, clearly the Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas matrix, those schools still are underrepresented in the Ivies or at selective schools in the Northeast. More at some schools than other. I definitely more so at Dartmouth than at Yale. But they still have very low numbers in all those schools, but those are also relatively small states. So, the South is a big place. So, obviously Georgia and North Carolina and Florida are much more cosmopolitan and much more urban and suburban now, and growing in population than Arkansas, but Arkansas has grown too. Then Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, the deeps, and Louisiana are still sort of unfortunately looked down their nose at by the Ivies, and fewer kids are applying for them. I think the state to really be from on the East Coast, if you want to go to an Ivy, is West Virginia, and obviously the north, the south, the Rockies is really where it's at. Like South Dakota and West, if you can, but not even Utah now is no longer good, and Wyoming. A lot of the kids who live in Jackson, they're part-time. They're in LA part-time. So does that even count as Wyoming anymore? I don't know. But the best states to be from in order to get into a selective college are probably West Virginia, North and South Dakota. Maybe, that's probably those are my top 3. I guess Alaska, maybe a little bit Alaska. But so the South doesn't really cut it as much anymore. Your son is a freshman in Florida. Good. I'm happy he loves it. He's from the Northeast. Yes. A lot of Northeast kids, having gone to highly ideological K through 12 schools for so many years, they're done with that. They just want to relax, have fun. To be honest, drink, hook up, do fun stuff like that. And you can do fun stuff like that at colleges without having politics intrude into every section of your life. More in the South than in the Northeast. In the Northeast, you still have to sort of play it straight and, toe the company or the ideological line, whether you're at a public school or at a private school. That's even true at UVA and North. Whether it's a public school or at a private school in Virginia and North, you have to toe the line or you can be destroyed very quickly. You can't walk out of line there so easy. Whereas in the South, you can not even think about politics. It'd be nice not to go to a college and think of it's just nice, be a teenager, be a low 20 something and enjoy life. Don't think about politics. Politics is sort of like a soap opera or gossip. It's like reading the tabloids for people these days. It's not a productive use of your time. Vote, by all means vote, but beyond that, don't stress about it. But unfortunately, you have to stress about it if you're going to some of these top end schools in the Northeast, because if you say the wrong thing, they could out you as having the wrong thoughts and try to destroy your life. So that's no fun. Good. I'm happy you've had an experience, positive one at Baylor. Obviously, Baylor is, more religious than some other schools that have a Christian affiliation, as is Pepperdine in different ways. But, so just know what you're getting into. But Baylor is a great school. I think it's a great school for the right kid. UNC Chapel Hill Honors College with possible full ride. Oh yeah, that would be lovely. I don't know yet, but a finalist for it. Good for you. Good luck. Duke for someone planning to go into grad school. No, look, I think it's overrated where you go undergrad for where you go grad. That's certainly true with med, but it's even true for other areas too. I think what's more important is that you're comfortable where you go undergrad. you like it, you connect to people, you make lifelong friends, you feel comfortable in that environment. But UNC and Duke are both amazing schools. They're very different in some ways, but they're very similar in others. If one's going to be full pay and one's going to be free ride, and you like the free ride one almost as much, if not more, than Duke, don't feel pressure to go to Duke because it's private and more quote unquote prestigious or higher ranked. UNC Chapel Hill is really good too. Really good. Does it differ from schools like Duke mean that the application is competitive? Yes, it does. But your chances of getting in is still pretty bad because I think they only typically accept like 10% of deferred kids. Now, that's still better than probably the overall chance of admission regular. But if they really wanted you, they would have taken your early decision. What are your thoughts on the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts alone, and how it compares to Boston College with its falling acceptance rate? Well, I would say that I would say that there's no comparison. I think that Holy Cross is not in the same league as Boston College. No offense to Holy Cross, it's just not the same. It's just not as good. It doesn't have the, like I said, the prestige. A lot of college admissions now has status. I'm sorry to say. I mean, that's sort of the way it is. That's the way of the world. Status, status, status. It used to be a bumper sticker. Now it's what you put on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, or on your Tinder or whatever. I don't know what you do. But the point is, but with that said, Boston College is completely overrated. I have seen the quality of applicant who gets into Boston College internationally versus domestically, and it's embarrassing. Boston College should be embarrassed. Boston College, I think, was very vicious with the COVID shots, too, by the way. Regardless of your politics, I do think that they took it too far. And that the reason I know about that is I had clients complain to me, multiple clients, liberal clients complain to me about it. But forget that for a minute. Boston College is gone up in the world quite a bit in recent years. I still think of it as the old Boston College. Like it's a lovely school. There's nothing wrong with it, but it was much more similar to Holy Cross reputationally 10 years ago than it is now. Now it's like thinks it's like a little Georgetown or like, Villanova too. They both went from EA to ED, and that changed things. That's why I think Georgetown will do it too. They were both closer to Gonzaga 15, 20 years ago, Villanova and Boston College. There's nothing wrong with Boston College, but I do think it's overrated. Boston College benefits also from its Chestnut Hill location. And, Boston's a very popular destination, not just with domestic students and direct flights for domestic students, but also for a lot of international direct flights, particularly from the Middle East and Europe. So all the Boston colleges benefit from the direct flight. You can't underestimate how important it is for a Middle Eastern mother to have their child on a direct flight. So just keep that in mind. That's why all the Boston colleges are, the industry in the Northeast is education. That's just the industry. It used to be like different parts of the country had different industries. The industry in the Northeast is education, and particularly Boston. I mean, that the whole place goes to, if the education industry is torn asunder. That's why that judge that Harvard keeps getting its cases taken to, that judge with the glasses, that female judge, that's why she keeps ruling for Harvard, because the whole place depends on Harvard and MIT and all of them. It's an industry that the whole employment, the whole structure, the whole superstructure, the whole society of Boston, Massachusetts collapses if the education industry collapses. So that can't happen. So it has to keep getting better. It has to keep getting more inflated. So that's why it's pathetic, frankly, how bad Brandeis. I mean, Brandeis should really have been picked up by the coattails of that, but Brandeis cannot shake horrible leadership. Like Brandeis just has consistently bad leadership and has horrible branding. I think other than American University, I think Brandeis has been like the worst run school in terms of branding. The people at Brandeis and American University need to learn a thing or two from Northeastern and NYU. Because if they did, they would have much lower acceptance rates and much better quality students. But as things stand, Brandeis and American are just such underdeveloped resource. It's just so sad. There's no reason that they should be so weak relative to their brethren nearby. Like, it doesn't. American is like pathetic even compared to GW, and it shouldn't be the case. American has a lot going for it. It does not have good branding. It does not have good status. And same thing, particularly with Brandeis. I mean, the way Brandeis though tried to correct for it was stupid. They corrected for it by just bringing in a lot of Marxists. That was not the right move. You had to like bring in like a balanced group of higher quality students, not just like go full on, Zora Mandami. It's like there's a way to do it and there's a way not to. And Brandeis did not do it the right way. Neither did American. Didn't go the full commie route. But what happened was with American, they sort of just they just didn't change. Talk about an anachronism. They just rested on the laurels of like what they were for 22 many years. They didn't keep changing with the times in terms of everything that a school like Northeastern and NYU did, and Boston College type schools. So anyway, I went off on a tangent again. What do I think of Gonzaga? I like Gonzaga. I like it. I think Gonzaga is a one that I'm going to be mentioning more. That's my New Year's resolution. I'm going to mention Gonzaga more. I love Tech. Well, let me put it this way. Texas Christian University. I'm a very relational person. So when someone has played with me or screwed with me or been disrespectful, I remember that. Like I try to be agnostic, but I remember it. So I'm not so impressed by Texas Christian University's admissions office. Okay. Sure, your letter of continued interest should not be 2 pages. And let me just say one more thing about Texas Christian. Like, please don't think I'm isolating Texas Christian. As you know, if you've been watching my videos, I've been very critical of Penn's admissions office. So I am an equal opportunity offender, if that makes sense. Like the difference between Texas Christian and Penn is like Penn's an Ivy League school, so it gets brought up more. There's much more demand for it in my circles of kids and parents that I work with. Again, I'm based in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast, and I also have a lot of international families. So Texas Christian is just not on the radar of most of my people, so I can generally, thankfully, avoid it. But I would say that ideologically, the leadership of Penn is in the admissions office is very similar, though less condescending. The leadership ideologically is the same at Texas Christian and Penn, which is interesting. It shouldn't be, right? Culturally, they should be very different. But I think the only big difference between Penn's admissions office and Texas Christian University's admissions office is that they're a little more folksy and appearing to be down to earth and less condescending at Texas Christian University on first blush. But otherwise, no, they're basically this is ideologically, it's the same. It's the same. And so I obviously work in the world of admissions. So I know a lot of these people. I've run in these circles for 2 decades now. And so I just, I don't recommend it. Hoping to get your advice for a junior in New Jersey interested in pursuing a veterinary career. What would you recommend focusing on right now? Particular college mate. Well, I would try to work with animals. Try to work at a vet's office or the SPCA or the local county's animal shelter. So try to get your hands dirty safely with animals. Like I said, the more you can do, start an animal club at school, or even let's say you're interested in a particular animal. Like maybe you're more into marine life, start the aquarium club. If you're more into large mammals, like maybe start a horse club or something. Try to create a club or activity around the most niche interest you have as it relates to animals. Okay. And the more depth you have with that and more experience, and the further you go with that, the more compelling you will be as a serious pre-vet applicant. And someone who really wants to get into animal science or study that as an undergrad, and then eventually move on to veterinary school, but it's a long march. You could go on any number of detours between the time you're a high school junior when you're 16 or 17 to when you're 22 and actually starting vet school. I mean, that's a long way. It's a way. So a lot of things have to go right for that to continue. But to get into a good college overall, if you're interested in animals, start pursuing animal related activities now. Don't wait for you to get to college to do that. What are your views on going to a slightly less prestigious school? Around 20 to 25% acceptance rate, when someone could potentially retire to potentially get merit aid and be a higher in the class. So again, I would have to know the actual apples to apples comparison there. But what I would say is it all depends on your situation. I mean, money matters. I don't think any of these schools are really worth $100,000 now. It's ridiculous per year. Vanderbilt, that's crazy. So money matters. Unless you're loaded, in which case, yeah, you just go to the most prestigious school because you'll have more people who are smart to date, I guess. I don't know. But other than that, and it's all about status anyway. So it's just about the social circles you run in. So it's a higher perceived social circle. I don't know. But otherwise, there is something to be said for being the top of your class, particularly for sort of majors. Like if you know you're going to be pre-med, I would go to the easiest school undergrad possible. I would not want to be at a school where there's a curve. If I was pre-med, I would avoid Johns Hopkins like the plague. I would avoid it like the plague because it is so cutthroat and it's so miserable. And you're always going to watch your back. And what is it? Was Washington and Jefferson, I think, has a better placement rate, I think, than Hopkins for pre-med into med school. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you want good supportive systems, but you also want to be in an environment where you won't feel stressed in every science class throughout your entire 4-year experience and all the pre-med prerequisites. So it depends also on your major, whether or not you want to feel like you're at the top of the class or can handle it compared to your peers more, not less. Now, with that said, for most majors, I always aim high because it really doesn't matter. But if you know you have a long play involved at wanting to go to grad school, for medical school in particular, or vet school in particular, you got to be more strategic with your undergrad choices. And again, I did a whole video about this a couple of years ago about the way to be strategic about how you pick pre-med schools. Do I know about Zambia? I got a 1500 on my second try. So does my location and score matter? Well, I mean, Zambia is in Africa. You got a 1500 on the SAT and you sound like you're from Zambia. That's pretty cool. Congratulations. I mean, I think that's awesome. I mean, colleges in the United States definitely want more Africans. Not because you're black, but because you're African and because you're from Zambia. I'm assuming there's not that many Zambians at most colleges in the United States, right? There's just not that many Zambians generally studying in the United States. So the fact that you're from Zambia and got a 1500 and have a 4.0 is really impressive. So you ride that all the way into my MIT, my friend. I mean, you should just, I mean, I don't know your financial situation though. That's the problem. You should definitely look to see that if you have a tight financial situation, then you want to apply to schools that do not discriminate in terms of a need-based financial aid based off nationality, which is only a small number of schools. But if you're loaded in Zambia and you got a 1500 on the SAT and you have a 4.0, your world's your oyster, my friend, as a full pay Zambian with a 1500 on the SAT. I don't care if you're green, black, white, blue. I don't care if you're fat, thin, short, tall, but if you're loaded, 1500 on the SAT, 4.0 GPA, applying from Zambia as a Zambian national, and you're going to be full pay, you're going to get into a lot of American colleges. You're going to get into a lot, if not all, of the American colleges you apply to. So good luck. Good luck. And I don't think you're going to need much luck as long as you can write in English well, which is a big question. Again, you might not be a good writer, in which case, if you're completely illiterate but somehow got the 1500 on the SAT, then that's going to be a problem. So you could always apply to NYU because you could just skip the optional essay, or Northwestern, where they don't even require the Common App essay anymore. But you have to do the supplemental essay still for Northwestern. But you might want to get a writing coach if you can't write well for your essay. But otherwise, you're going to get into a lot of schools. Does he defer from Duke? Is it the same kid keep asking me about Duke? Yeah, I think it is. Does a defer from Duke mean that the application is competitive for other top schools like UVA? Well, not now, because UVA EA is over. A UVA regular is very hard to get into. Williams is very hard to get into. It's competitive, but you're going to have to spread the wealth regular because again, I don't know why you fell down at Duke. Was it because your Duke essays were bad? Was it because your letters of recommendations were bad? I don't know. But a defer is not a horrible sign in the sense that it means you were at least somewhat respectable. But all those schools for regular are going to be very hard for you. So you got to cast a wider net, and you got to go a little bit lower down than just Williams and UVA. I would go to maybe Wisconsin level schools and that level school as well. And in terms of liberal arts, maybe Vassar type, Skidmore, just to have one or two more of those would be wise for you. And not just Swarthmore's and Williams types. Okay. All right. What are some schools that would be easy for pre-med? None are easy, but any school that accepts greater than 60% of applicants is going to have a much different pre-med experience than an Ivy. If you're smart and could have gotten into an Ivy, but go to that school that accepts 60% or more, you're going to be able to navigate that environment much more successfully than the majority of kids at that school. So you're probably going to be able to make hay of the undergraduate experience more, and therefore have a more impressive overall application to medical school in 4 years, because the standards have to be lower there in many ways. Now, is the pre-med advising as good? That's an open question. You should always ask about what does pre-med advising really look like at the school you're applying to or you're about to deposit at. You have every right to ask about that, just like you have every right to ask about everything related to career services. Like, what is the pre-med placement? What is the medical school placement rate? What does pre-med advising look like every year of the 4-year undergraduate experience? Can you study abroad and do pre-med? Do you have a decided advisor? If so, when? What type of support do they give you? Is it just reactive or is it also proactive? These are very fair questions regardless of the school you go to for pre-med. What type of person would I not advise to do EA at Yale? Most people. I would not. I would advise most people not do EA at Yale, because Yale accepts very few people, and you have to be no kid I've ever had get into Yale is normal. And I don't mean that insultingly, but you have to be abnormal to get into Yale. So that's from right off the bat. So the average Joe or Jane should not apply to Yale early action. That's number one. You have to be exceptional. You have to be exceptional in almost every way that you can be exceptional. And that goes not just for the grades and the scores and letters of recommendation and the activities pursued, but also in terms of the intellectual interest and oomph that you bring to the application. They have very limited number of supplemental words to work with on the Yale supplement. But if you're going to get into Yale early action, it's because you define yourself so vividly in those limited number of words, and your grades and scores are basically beyond reproach, and you present as the only that is applying this year like you. That is the only way you will get into Yale. And I've seen more typical, and what I mean by they're all abnormal in the sense that they are extreme. They're extremists. They're people who are extremist in what they do. I've said in a past video, your application must demonstrate addiction. For Yale, you basically have to be an extremist. It doesn't mean you're an extremist politically or that way or religiously. What I mean is that you're an extremist in whatever it is you choose to pursue or whatever it is you're passionate about. You go big or go home. That is the type of person you have to be to get into Yale early action. So I've had pre-med kids go to Yale. I've had social science kids, history kids go to Yale. I've had kids go to Yale who are very nerdy, very athletic, everything in between. But one thing they all have in common is I think they've all, in recent years, all of them have been EA. Again, they avoid the regular round. But beyond that, the thing they all have in common is that they are deep and narrow. They are not broad and shallow. They are deep and narrow. Keep that in mind. They are deep and narrow, not broad and shallow. What about pre-med at Georgetown? My son was accepted REA, but he's also waiting for other decisions on Ivy Day. Personally, I love Georgetown when we toured. Again, I I'll be honest, I don't follow the pre-med advising that exists at all schools year on, year out, and it can change more dramatically than the admissions world does. So I strongly advise you to have your child or I think it's your son, ask what pre-med advising looks like at Georgetown and start asking what does that look like at the Ivy schools on his list. So that once Ivy Day comes and if he gets into 1 or 2 or 3 Ivies, he can really start comparing apples to apples. But obviously there's Georgetown Medical Center. Is it owned by MedStar Health? I don't know. But Georgetown, obviously there's medical, there's a lot of opportunity to do extracurricular activities related to your pre-med application, your medical school application. But remember, the medical school admission process is entirely different than the undergraduate admissions process. The big focus there is your GPA in pre-med prerequisite courses overall and your MCAT score. And then just rounding out with an impressive differentiated application that conveys depth of interest in medicine, but does so in a differentiated way that, again, shows diversity in one way, shape, or form. So he needs to feel comfortable where he's going undergrad so he can blossom as early as possible so he can start taking advantage of academic opportunities and extracurricular opportunities that will allow him to start building that application for medical school. So that where he feels most comfortable undergrad is where he should go undergrad, as long as you're also confident in the pre-med advising program that exists and the infrastructure that will support him over his 4 years there. Okay. Generally, would you submit a 25th percentile SAT score to a school if your grades are around the 50th percentile? Oh my God, no. What, when you say 25th percentile, the bottom 25th percentile or the 75th percent? Because 25th percentile, as I read, is like the lower 25%. So I typically say if you're not in the top 50% SAT score wise, you should not submit your score to a test optional school. But obviously that changes a little bit when your SAT score is very different. So that's something that you have to consider as well. When do you think the majority of top 30 will go back to test required? I don't think they all will. I think the majority won't actually. Again, we'll see how things change politically in the country. If the UCs obviously do go back to test required, then all of them will. Because the UCs, give the marching orders to a lot of the, smart set, if you will. And so obviously, like if all of a sudden the UCs are test required again, which they won't be, I don't think they're going to be, but let's say they are, Vanderbilt would sort of feel embarrassed staying test optional, right? So, but I mean, I guess more will, like, look, Miami has gone back to being, Miami of all places is test required. I think it's, again, a travesty that Miami has gone back to test required while Columbia has not. Princeton even was later to returning to test required than Miami. I mean, what a world we're living in. It's like literally the Twilight Zone. So, of course, my hope would be that they all go back to being test required. But these are money-making enterprises, and they are also status-granting enterprises. They are going to remain test optional as long as they can. They're going to remain test optional as long as they can, because the test optional allows them to accept anywhere between 5 and 40, 70, 40, 50% of kids they would not be accepting if they were test required. They're basically accepting based off of sense, like the scent, like the smell of the kid, or it's crazy what kids get into college for now. When you think about it, it's really, and especially a school like Williams, the schools that don't even require any writing on the supplement. It's all identity. I don't care what they say. It may not be written down anywhere but it's all identity. It's all, we want a flavor of everything. We want a gay woman from Wyoming. We want a transsexual man from Mexico City. We want one of every flavor of person. Okay. So it just, every combination and permutation. So without test scores, they have carte blanche, because most schools now just give A's. So they can find plenty of kids with straight A's at every type of school. An inner city school, an urban school, a rural school, a rich school, a poor school, a public school, a private school, an international school, a domestic school. So that's easy. That's easy to get a lot of kids with it. India, you name it. they're graduate diploma mills where they just print out A transcripts. So if you can get so many kids with straight A's and not have to look at their scores, it all comes down then to the writing. And then the letters of recommendation, which are easy, unfortunately, to also cheat on. So the writing is interesting. So that's why AI is so interesting. How can you write in a way that is authentic? They want to hear your authentic voice. And so a lot of these colleges have gone from being eloquent to being authentic as another way around merit, if you will, in the sense that, if you can't really write in English clearly, maybe they still want to accept you because you're speaking in your authentic voice as someone from your canton in this part of the world or whatever, your little district, and you're speaking in your own voice. And they like that. They like that. Even if it's broken English, they don't care. English, they don't care. They don't care. So, with my students, I still try to get them to speak articulately in the best version of themselves as they can speak. I don't try to put them in my voice. I try to keep them in their voice, but the most articulate version of their voice. But, the Dukes of the world, other schools now, they will remain test optional as long as they can because they get to accept so many kids they would never, with a straight face or without blushing, be able to accept. And that's in the post-affirmative action world. They need that. Some of these schools, more schools than you may realize, need it. They need it. That's why Whitney Soule was falling over herself, just kissing the figurative feet of the QuestBridge students that she just accepted. Because yes, it's a small number, relatively small number, but it's actually still a pretty significant number. But it's such a significant number for her. Because if she didn't have QuestBridge, and even that's an Ivy League school, Harvard joined QuestBridge. They didn't do it for their health. They did it because what QuestBridge is doing, and that's why it's the biggest underreported story in admissions. And that's why I keep sort of tangentially mentioning it here or there, and I try to drop hints, but it's really a scandal. But imagine, so if they didn't have QuestBridge, the problem is the holdovers on the staff. Many of the staff are pre SFFA staff, so they're operating. They can still sort of in their sleep do what they need to do to create the class they need to create. The test optional, though, is a key tool in their toolkit. If the toolkit gets limited by taking test optional away, that's going to be a real problem for them. That's going to be a real problem. And so that's why I think more schools are going to hold on to test optional as much longer than you may realize. But I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on everything. I'm not like God. So I don't know what it will be for sure. But my prediction is I think that things have settled down. I think that maybe one or two may more go back to test required. But I don't think it's going to be a huge deluge going to be going back to test required. From your experience, how much does admissions value a strong narrative and evidence of growth when the numbers aren't perfectly standard? Well, they do value. They love Cinderella stories, but they also like really high standards of growth, of achievement. So if you can do both, that would be great. Does the strategy you mentioned for med school applicants also apply? No, it's completely different for law school. It's different. I got deferred from Notre Dame. One thing I did not address in my application was the fact that I'm doing senior flex for hockey, where I play at a high level. Would providing this clarity help? Yeah. If you have a letter of continued interest, please provide that clarity. Yeah. I think all clarity. I don't write a book, but obviously they do. That's why I'm a big believer in resumes or trying to elaborate on the big details of the items in the activities list, because you really want to contextualize as much as possible. Use that additional information section on the writing page, even though it's only limited to 300 words, to contextualize things that need to be explained. Absolutely. Thank you for all your advice so far. When do you think? Now, I know I've been doing it too long. I've been doing this for 3 hours now, so I'm going to have to stop because now I'm repeating myself. Watch the early part of this video. I think you should get that letter of continuing interest in by the 20th of January. That's what I typically recommend my kids do. I was hoping that it might have been a possibility that Notre Dame simply was confused as to why I am taking classes, why I'm taking classes this year. Hence the reason for my question. Okay, well, I appreciate that context. Could you go into your recommended strategy for law school? No, because I'm not a law school college admissions consultant. I'm not a grad consultant. I'm not a transfer consultant. I'm really focused on first year applications. And for law school, there's so much more, you have so much more flexibility. And it's also, there's much lower stakes. I mean, obviously, it's actually pretty big stakes if you think about it, because lawyers make up the majority of our politicians, right? It's actually huge stakes for people. It's not as imminently related to life and death, but it actually is when we think about how lawyers are very powerful players in society. But there's many more pathways into law school, let's just put it that way, than there are into medical school. Okay. So this has been fun. I talked straight for 3 hours, and I just decided I would do this. Again, I'm in a different setting than I'm normally. I'm just having a lot of fun here, just sitting here, relaxing on a Saturday night as you complete your regular decision applications. And I really think this has been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed this, because I certainly have enjoyed it. I guess this was my 5-minute warning. Any final really good or new question, I'll be happy to answer. But I can't thank you guys enough for watching for 3 hours. Some of you have joined later. But I'm in the corner, as they said in that Robin song here. I'm literally in the corner. And I'm dancing on my own, as they say. So I'm in the corner. I'm giving it my all. But I'm not the girl you're taking home tonight, I guess, right? So no, this is Robin. Do you remember Robin? Robin, that's a good song. Is that one of my top songs to complete your application to? If you guys have not watched my video series about songs to complete your application to, please watch that, because that could get you in the right frame of mind as you wrap up your regular decision applications. Some really good inspirational songs. I don't know, though, if I put Robin's Dancing on My Own in that countdown. I have some other really good banger songs in that countdown. Watch my top 24 top 24 songs to complete your college applications to, which I published in 2024. Those are some really good videos, and it's interspersed with the actual live YouTube video, the YouTube video of that official song. So let me see. Final. Given that testing is required this year, how does Harvard review applicants who applied without scores due to documented circumstances, especially with a 3.6 GPA and clear? Well, I mean, you really are on thin ice if you applied without scores to Harvard. Yeah, they say officially you can get away with it, but you better have a good darn documented circumstance, because Harvard's test required. So I mean, that's just not, I don't have high hopes for your application. 3.6 GPA is not so good for Harvard. So to answer your question very directly and bluntly, I hate to go out like this, but I don't think you're getting into Harvard without submitting scores. They're required, even though you have documented circumstances, because you have a 3.6 GPA and you have no scores. So it'd be one thing if you had like a 4.0 or higher GPA and an amazing Cinderella story. And maybe you do have an amazing Cinderella story. Like maybe your house burned down and you're living in a shelter and it's amazing you're even still standing. And that 3.6 GPA is therefore very impressive. And maybe you lost family members in the fire. I mean, contextually, that would be an amazing story. And I'm so sorry for your loss. But you might get into Harvard then. That could be like the 1 in a million situation where they actually, they didn't submit scores because, they lost everything in a fire. But really, 3.6 GPA, unless the circumstance is quite dramatic, you should have taken the test. You should have done well on the test, and you should have a 4.0 GPA to get into Harvard. Okay. All right. Well, this has been fun. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. To learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process, go to my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, visit areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com, at which you will complete a free 3-minute assessment. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com. The link to that and the links to other really important websites are in this video's description. Thank you guys so much. Happy New Year. I hope this was helpful. And I'm so sorry that I can't keep going, but it's been 3 hours. I need to rest a little bit. But maybe I'll do this again soon. And tell your junior friends about me and younger, because another cycle begins. And I want to help those kids too, and those families as well. And my class of 2026 is about done with me. And I want to work with kids in the class of 2027 and younger as well. So if you want to learn more about me, again, go to collegemeister.com. I have both packages, big packages, all the way down to half an hour time with me, strategy sessions. And so I hope I get to work with you one-on-one. But if you don't want to work with me one-on-one, or you can't work with me one-on-one, also remember that there's so many free videos here. And I also offer those 2 courses, which are so awesome, including 17 silly mistakes that even applicants to Ivy League colleges make. And the 17 silly mistakes that even Ivy League applicants make, and also how to build an extraordinary extracurricular resume. All of these links, by the way, are included in this video's description. Until next time, again, my name is Craig Meister. Stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process. Talk to you soon.